American comic, I'm lost, I'm surrounded by superheroes with father issues. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 851, The Witch's New Demon-like Creature. The holy water with the Bible sprayed on the demons, causing the three female demons to scream in pain. Then, in the eyes of everyone, the three female demons gradually melted away. Finally, they gradually disappeared in the air, leaving only a few sparks. At this time, Gloria came out of the church and looked at the disappearing female elf demons. She was a little surprised and said to Zatanna, who was panting slightly, "Are you really a Catholic?" "To be honest, I believe in everything," Zatanna shrugged her shoulders and said. Siri came over, looked at the mess on the ground, and asked Peter and Zatanna in confusion, "Who are they?" Peter smelled the burning smell in the air, frowned, and replied to her, "They are elemental fairies sent by the demon Mammon." He casually released a rune spell. Under his magic, the buildings in the monastery began to return to their original appearance. While repairing the damaged monastery, Peter asked Zatanna, "When did you provoke this greedy devil?" "I don't know," Zatanna said. Repair and used irony magic to help Peter repair the damaged buildings of the monastery. "But I guess this guy will not give up. I will deal with him myself," Zatanna said to Peter and Siri with a serious expression. The two had just used magic to restore the building to its original appearance when the police who received the alarm came over. Mr. Padrick, the leading police officer, knew Peter and came over to greet him. "What happened?" "Mr. Padrick, we received a call from the police saying that there was a conflict here." "Are you okay?" "Of course, I'm fine." Peter smiled at the other party. "It's okay here now. Sorry for the trouble, Sheriff." After sending the police away, Peter walked towards Teresa and Jean. "Are you two okay?" "I'm fine, Dad." "Me too, Mr. Padrick." Joan's eyes were shining with admiration. "Mr. Padrick, are you that kind of great magician?" "The kind of magician who can destroy demons." "Or an exorcist?" "No, I'm not a magician, nor an exorcist, but you defeated them easily," Joan said excitedly. "Can you teach me that move?" "The one that summons the giant hand," Peter thought to himself. "I can teach you to ride a motorcycle. Are you interested?" Teresa, who didn't know that her father was complaining, raised her hand and said to Peter, "Dad, you must teach me this move, and I will use this execution move when I fight with others in the future." Teresa now feels that she must have this handsome execution move. And these three fire spirit demons, can she sign a contract with them? She thinks that the flames released by these hell creatures are very powerful. If she can summon them, it will be very useful in a fight. Gloria, who was standing aside, squinted her eyes and also thought about the fire spirits. At the same time, hell. When Mammon's golden scepter hit the obsidian ground, the soul crystals in the entire punishment hall screamed at the same time. The bodies of the three fire elves corroded by holy water were regenerating in the sulfur pool, and Melissa's broken lava braids made a sizzling sound. "Look at yourselves, a mere trick of holy water has left you helpless. How pathetic," a dull bang sounded. The flames in Mammon's eye sockets suddenly surged, and the lava tentacles of the throne extended to drag the three people to the judgment platform. When the jaws of the golden skull on the judgment platform opened and closed, liquid dripped along the ribs, corroding smoking holes on the ground. Melissa tried to argue, "Lord Mammon, the holy water used by that magician is different from other holy water. And if it weren't for that man's help, we wouldn't." Before she finished speaking, the pain gem on the top of Mammon's scepter emitted a faint light. The vocal cords of the fire elves suddenly turned into two twisting red chain snakes, biting each other in the throat. "Shut up. No matter what the reason, you have lost to that magician. Your sins that bring shame to hell need punishment to purify." Mammon flicked his finger bones, and three crystal coffins descended from the dome of the punishment hall. The inner walls of these transparent containers were covered with barbs, and on each spike there was a miniature version of the suffering angel repeating the process of having his tongue pulled out. Seeing that she was going to be punished, the wings behind one of the fire elves suddenly moved on its own, carrying her to the nearest teleportation array. Mammon sneered as if metal was rubbing against each other, and the golden scepter gently touched the ground. The wings of the fire elf were instantly petrified, and the flames at the ends of the wings were immediately extinguished. As Mammon recited the spell, the fire elf let out a wail that was not like a human voice. This inverted energy core began to absorb her flame skin in the opposite direction, and countless flame skins were torn off every second, and then regrown under the regeneration of the sulfur pool. The green smoke produced by the burning continued to emerge from the fire elf's ear holes. Seeing her companion being punished, Melissa wanted to resist, but was pressed on the anvil by an invisible force. At this time, her most proud flaming whip was being reforged. Countless venomous snake chains with barbs replaced the original lava material and kept drilling into her spine. Ah! She screamed and fell to her knees. Brilliant golden flames gushed out from her 7 orifices, burning her vocal cords into charcoal. But the next second, the regeneration of the sulfur pool gave her new vocal organs, and the whole process continued in a cycle. Now, every time she breathed, golden flames would burst out of her chest, and these golden flames would first cut her internal organs, and then seep out from the surface of her skin. Even though she was a fire elf, she could not withstand the damage of this kind of flame. The ground of the punishment hall was soon filled with organ fragments flashing with sparks, and was swept into the painful furnace under the throne by an invisible force. When the bronze door of the punishment hall made a sound, the painful voice of the fire elf echoed in the corridor. Seeing that she was about to die completely, Melissa made up her mind and jumped out directly despite the severe pain, and rushed out of the door. She wanted to escape from here. Otherwise, she would have to live in this dark and miserable life forever. Even if the chance was slim, she would give it a try. Seeing Melissa trying to escape, Mammon sneered. No one had ever escaped from him. He wanted to see how the other party would escape. Just as Melissa was about to escape, she suddenly felt a force calling her. And this force seemed to want to sign a contract with her. As long as she could escape, she didn't care about any contract. The moment she agreed, bang, a force pulled her out of the bronze gate. Chapter 852, Night Exploration of Lone Pine Ridge, Zatanna's Intuition. Swoosh, the next second, the fire spirit Melissa was instantly sucked away by an invisible force. A space gate opened in the void, and Melissa, who was pulled into the portal, disappeared instantly. Seeing Melissa disappear just like that, the demon lord Mammon was stunned. Before he could react, the other party was pulled into the portal by this invisible force. What? He threw the scepter in his hand to the ground, and Mammon stood up suddenly. Who did it? He roared with disbelief in his eyes. Who took people away under my nose? Realizing that someone was doing something under his nose, Mammon roared at his men with an ugly face. The men knelt on the ground, trembling. After roaring at his men, Mammon gradually calmed down. No one could openly snatch people from his hands except those lords and the 4 archangels in heaven. He took the cigar from his men and took a deep puff. The lords of hell had no grudges against him, so it shouldn't be them. If it was the 4 archangels, who did it? Michael? Or Gabriel? After thinking for a while without any result, he simply stopped thinking about it and focused on Zatanna, who had fought with a fire spirit before. Although he didn't know who the man who helped Zatanna was, the final result was that Zatanna defeated her own men. It seems that my good helper in Las Vegas, Benji Raymond, has got another good opportunity to postpone his sentence, he whispered to himself and slowly walked to his collection room. Mammon, who was very satisfied with Zatanna's soul, decided to collect Zatanna's soul for his own use. He picked up a glass bottle on the shelf, looked at the human soul that was struggling and shouting inside, and whispered to himself, a soul like Zatanna can easily become a treasure in my collection. I need to find a bottle 5 times larger for her to use. Maybe I can bring Benji to make a deal. He put down the bottle containing the soul and walked outside. Late at night, Las Vegas. Mr. Raymond, there's a cowboy over there who's won a lot of money. His subordinate reported to Sony that someone was winning money in the casino. How much did he win? Sony asked his subordinate casually as he walked towards the casino office. Similar things happen every day in the casino, so he didn't pay much attention to it. It must be $700,000 700,000. Sony's expression was a little careless, but when he heard his subordinate say that, his eyes widened immediately. He asked his subordinate to take him to the person who won the money. Next to the gambling table, Sony saw the person who kept winning money. The other party was wearing a black suit, a cowboy hat, and a cigar in his mouth. The brim of the cowboy hat blocked the other party's face, making it difficult for Sony to see clearly. Good luck, men. Sony came over with a glass of wine and put it in front of the other party. One piece of advice to you, men, you should go home for a walk, but I just warmed up the cards. Little Benji, The moment Sony put his hand on the other party's shoulder, the gambler raised his head, revealing a distorted face full of exaggerated wrinkles. "It's you." Seeing the familiar face, Sony was shocked and horrified. How could it be you? He didn't expect that the other party would be the devil who had signed a contract with him all along. Mammon. Don't be so surprised, I've been a regular customer since this place opened. Mammon said to the horrified Sony while smoking a cigar. According to the deal we made in 1947, I share with you the operating rights of all the clubs you opened, including the new one, Benji. I will come here from time to time to smoke. You must control the investment risk, you know. He stood up and spit out a mouthful of cigar in his mouth. You have to pay attention, Benji. Your time is running out, and you will not be able to continue pretending to be your son soon. It turned out that Sony was not the son of his father Benjamin Diamond. He was actually the old Diamond. The reason why he lived so long and was not dead was that he signed a contract with the devil. Sony, that is, Benji, heard Mammon say that his time was running out, and he clenched the wine glass in his hand. Zatanna signed a 1-week performance contract. I will catch her then. She is just harder to deal with than I thought. As soon as he finished speaking, the face of an old lady next to him became distorted. Then the old lady said in Mammon's voice, "Really? It's really bad that you two are not married. I always generously give your ex-wives more time." Benji looked at Mammon, who possessed the old lady, and said to her, "That's not a problem. I will deal with her." The old lady opened her mouth and said, "I believe you. In order to show my trust in you, I want to make our bet more attractive. You are a speculative man. You will definitely like this." "What bet?" "If you bring Zatanna's soul to me before midnight tomorrow, I can not only cancel the contract and set you free, but also give you immortality and keep you young forever." Mammon smiled and said, "Follow the procedure. If you don't bring her to me before midnight tomorrow, you will lose everything. I will take you away. The loser will pay double and the winner will write it off. This is my favorite game." Hearing Mammon's bet, Benji immediately shook his head and refused. "That's terrible. I refuse." "Why?" Mammon was a little hurt after being rejected. "It's too risky. I can't hand her over to you in such a short time. I need more time." "Don't worry." Mammon said that he would give him the key props. "I will give you a reasonable, 100% chance of success. Also, I will tell you where she is now, and I promise you will proceed smoothly." Padrick Farm. After Peter, Zatanna and Siri defeated the fire elf element, they drove Teresa and Jean back to the farm. Jean's mother said she had something to go out and hoped that Peter would help her take care of the child for a day. Peter did not refuse and pulled Jean back. In the living room of the farm, Peter told Zatanna everything that happened in Lone Pine Ridge. "That is to say, all the plants in Lone Pine Ridge are controlled by a force you don't know," Zatanna said with some doubts. "What kind of power is it that can escape your detection, sir?" "I don't know, maybe it comes from hell," Peter told her his guess. "But you know, Zatanna, I don't know as much about the demons in hell as you do, so I can only call you." "Is that so?" Zatanna thought for a moment and said to Peter, "Why don't we go to Lone Pine Ridge now? Maybe we'll find something there." Now, Peter glanced at the clock hanging on the wall of the living room. The time had already pointed to 10 o'clock in the evening. "Yes, right now. Usually at night, I will be particularly energetic. My father said I am a night owl." Zatanna stood up and smiled at Peter. "Okay, Miss Night Owl." Peter stood up and said to her. Since Zatanna is not afraid, Peter naturally doesn't mind entering Lone Pine Ridge now. Half an hour later. The moonlight is like a silver knife, cutting through the thick darkness of the forest outside the town of Smallville. Trample. 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 Peter's boot soles rolled over rotten pine needles, and the sour smell of humus, mixed with some strange smell, entered his nose. Zatanna behind him suddenly stopped, and a cluster of flames burst out from the tip of her wand. "It seems that this place has become a magic circle." Zatanna said a spell in her mouth-shape reveal. As she chanted the anti-verbal magic, Zatanna saw blood-colored veins appearing on the surface of the entire forest, and the tree roots as thick as pythons entangled into a hexagram array. At each node, it seemed that a wailing soul was nailed. Those souls were translucent, black and curled like withered vines. "This is not an ordinary magic circle, sir." Zatanna squatted down, her fingertips suspended half an inch above the ground. "This magic circle, it is devouring vitality, even souls." Swoosh! As soon as she finished speaking, a tree root suddenly twitched and wrapped around her wrist. Zatanna immediately released magic and smashed the vine into pieces. Just as she smashed the vine, Peter suddenly grabbed Zatanna and jumped into the sky. The ground where the two were originally standing exploded into a huge pit, and countless tree roots twisted into spiral spears and stabbed in pursuit. Peter's thermal vision swept over, and sticky black blood spurted out from the broken end. Zatanna's coat was splashed with mucus, and the fabric immediately corroded into honeycomb-shaped holes. Who set up the magic circle? Peter frowned and asked Zatanna while holding her in the air. I don't know, but it should be a very powerful wizard. The purpose of setting up the magic circle may be to obtain more magical power. This magic circle absorbs the vitality of living things and continuously strengthens the owner of the magic circle. Can you destroy it? Peter's face was a little ugly when he heard that the other party dared to make trouble in his territory. Of course, but even if I destroy it now, it may not be of much use. I guess the owner of the magic circle has already got what he wanted, Zatanna said to Peter, but I can try. To destroy this kind of magic circle, I need to go back and prepare. After hesitating for a moment, she moved unnaturally in Peter's arms, and whispered, although I have no evidence to prove what I said, the nun named Gloria in the monastery is a little strange. I always feel that there is something fuzzy about her and it is difficult to see clearly. Well, I have this feeling too, and Gloria's identity is a ranger of Pine Ridge. In that case, she is very suspicious. Peter was also a little suspicious at this time. Could this mysterious guy who made him a little unclear be the one who planned this murderous magic circle behind the scenes? Chapter 853 Miss Gloria was kidnapped. Angels can also be kidnapped. After a thorough investigation, Peter and Zatanna had no choice but to return to the farm. Meanwhile, at the monastery, moonlight leaked through the broken dome of the monastery, cutting spider-web-like cracks on Gloria's white robe. She knelt in front of the altar, reciting the Bible. The stained glass statues of saints creaked in the night wind, and suddenly a piece of glass peeled off and shattered on the ground with a crash. Then a black shadow slowly fell from the sky. The wings behind the black shadow were instantly retracted by the other party. You have tried so hard and finally found this place, Gloria said to the black shadow behind her in a low voice without looking back. The black shadow stepped out from behind the pillar, and the black wings swept across the pillar, and the head of the stone angel fell to the ground. The black shadow held a cross-sword in his left hand, shining in the moonlight. I never thought that the archangel would hide here. Do you really think you can protect that girl forever? You can't. That child was destined to be in trouble since birth. We can't control her fate, the shadow sneered. You can't protect her, even if she is your child. That's not necessarily true, Sander Fen. Listening to the words of the shadow, the person she called Sander Fen, Gloria turned around suddenly, and the Bible pages shot out from her sleeves, turning into golden energy and attacking the shadow. The latter chuckled, and the broken sword slashed out not with blade wind, but a series of Hebrew spells. The chain twisted in the air into a venomous snake that bit back at its master, and Gloria's white robe was instantly corroded with scorch marks. Taking advantage of the gap between the opponent's attacks, Gloria took the opportunity to jump to the top of the organ. Then, Gloria materialized the sound waves into several spear-wielding angel phantoms to attack the opponent. Facing the angel phantom, Sander Fang raised his sword above his head. The embryo in the sword screamed, and the phantom spear disintegrated into gray mist before it touched his wings. Sander Fang then flapped his wings and set off a storm, forcing Gloria back. Taking a step back, he said to Gloria with a relaxed expression, "You hid here, but it was easy for me to find you. I set up magic circles in the surrounding forests and constantly weakened the barrier you set up before I finally got in. Now I can feel your power weakening. You should have given some of your power to that girl. Now tell me, where is Elaine?" Gloria did not answer, but tore off her sleeves, and the fabric fibers turned into a flaming sword to attack the other party. The moment the gun and sword collided, it was as if a bell sounded from the ground, and the magic power that collided with each other made all the candles ignite in reverse. Sander Fang's wings suddenly swelled, and with a bang, he nailed Gloria to the crucifixion. The iron thorns pierced through the eye sockets of the Christ statue and pierced through his shoulder blade. A muffled groan came out of her mouth, and blood slowly overflowed from her mouth. "You should understand that you are very weak now, and you can't defeat me," Sander Fang said to him coldly. "Now tell me, Archangel, where is Elaine? Where did you hide her?" Gloria did not answer, but took the opportunity to bite the tip of her tongue, and blood foam sprayed on the flaming sword. The sword body surged to the height of the ceiling, and she was raised, splitting the holy water pool under Sander Fang's feet. The water flow was stained black by the curse, and turned into asphalt to entangle the legs of the fallen angel. Facing the attack of the water source, Lin Fang directly tore off a piece of his wings and inserted it into the floor tile. The wing fragments took root and grew wildly, turning the entire monastery into a hotbed of flesh and blood in the blink of an eye. The surface of the pillars protruded with throbbing blood vessels, and sharp teeth grew at the end of the armrests of the benches. Gloria's flaming sword was also swallowed by the squirming altar. Lin Fang walked towards Gloria on the flesh carpet, and the mucus on his fingertips dripped on the ground. "It seems that you don't know your situation yet." Lin Fang raised his hand and condensed a ball of light. Gloria tried to stand up, but Lin Fang was faster and blasted her into the church with a bang. A deafening sound rang out in the night. Padrick Farm. Joan of Arc, who was lying on the same bed with Teresa, suddenly woke up from her sleep. In her dream, she dreamed that Gloria was attacked and fell in the ruins of the church, not knowing whether she was dead or alive. Sweating profusely, she saw a dark figure standing in front of the bed. Mona, seeing the outline of the dark figure, Joan of Arc tried to speak to the other party. She often saw the soul of her friend Mona. Now seeing the dark figure standing in front of the window, she subconsciously called out the other party's name. "It's me, Elaine. The angel chasing you will find you soon. Be careful of him." After Mona's soul spoke to her, it slowly retreated. "Don't leave here, stay on this farm." "Wait. Mona, where are you going?" Seeing Mona was about to leave, Joan of Arc immediately wanted to chase her. Her action quickly woke up Teresa, who was holding the Shiba Inu doll. Teresa opened her eyes and saw Joan about to run out. Teresa immediately called her good friend. The pink ball lying on the table fell asleep and jumped down from the table and jumped to Joan's feet, as if to stop her from leaving. "What's wrong, Joan?" Teresa rubbed her eyes and asked her, "Are you feeling unwell?" "No, I feel that something happened to Gloria." Joan grabbed Teresa's arm anxiously. "I have to go back to the church." "Bayonetta, what happened?" Teresa asked in confusion. "Anyway, Gloria may have something wrong. I have to go back. I just dreamed that something happened to him, and I also saw Mona." Seeing Joan's anxious look, Teresa comforted her. "Don't worry, Joan, I'll go call Dad. Dad must know what happened." A few minutes later, Peter and Siri, Zatanna, Teresa and Joan were standing in the living room talking. After hearing what Jean said, Peter frowned. After whispering a few words of comfort to Jean, who looked worried, Peter asked Zatanna to open the portal. As a purple portal opened, Peter took the hands of the two girls and walked towards the monastery on the other side of the portal. Since Zatanna had been to the monastery before, she could open the portal leading directly there. As a flash of purple mist passed by, Teresa was shocked to find that she had arrived at the monastery. The mess of the monastery in front of them made Teresa and Zatanna completely stunned. The buildings of the monastery had collapsed at this time, and it looked like it had been hit by a particularly large bombing. The fountain was completely damaged and all the water inside had disappeared. In the ruins of the broken walls, the debris of the collapsed church was mixed in. "What is this?" Zatanna said to herself in shock. "What happened here?" On the other side, seeing that the ruins of the church had collapsed, Jean's eyes were instantly filled with tears. "Gloria!" She walked into the ruins and tried to call Gloria's name. But there was only the sound of wind in the ruins of the building, and no one responded to her. Teresa went forward to comfort her good friend with some discomfort. "Although I don't know what happened, I think Gloria must be fine," Teresa comforted her friend. Although she didn't quite believe what she said. Looking at the ruined building in front of her, Zatanna clenched her fists. "It must be the work of the devil Mammon. I can feel the breath of the devil here." Zatanna gritted her teeth and said to Peter. "Not necessarily, don't rush to draw conclusions now." After Peter and Zatanna talked for a few words, he walked towards Joan of Arc, gently squatting down and wiping away the tears on her face. Peter asked her, "Joan of Arc, can you tell me what Gloria's name is?" "I know, this must be her fake name, right?" After Peter tidied her black hair, he said to her, "I know she is a very mysterious person, you must know it too, right?" Hearing Peter's words, Joan of Arc was stunned. Then she looked a little flustered and didn't dare to look Peter in the eye. "Sorry, Uncle Padrick, I didn't mean to say that. Gloria didn't let me tell her his real name, and I don't know if it's true." Hearing her say that, Siri and Zatanna both came over. Gloria said that she is Michael Demiurge. Michael Demiurge. Hearing this name, Peter was stunned. "She is the Archangel." Siri came over curiously and asked, "Which Archangel?" "It's Archangel Michael." also known as Michael, the guardian of the Garden of Eden, the origin of wisdom. He is the only archangel who has been granted the title of archangel by God. He is also the most loyal and powerful angel among all God's angels. In the Bible, his name is translated as one who is similar to God, and his status is extremely high. Zatanna came over to explain to Siri. She was also very surprised that Archangel Michael was actually a woman. Isn't Michael a blonde warrior holding a cross-sword or a scale and wearing armor? How did he become a woman? Although the gender of angels has always been ambiguous, will the archangel appear in the image of a woman? Looking at the somewhat uneasy Joan of Arc, Zatanna suspected that the other party might use the female image to take care of Joan of Arc. So, Joan of Arc, is Michael really your father? Zatanna asked the other party curiously. Yes, Gloria said that I am her daughter and she created me. Joan of Arc looked at Peter carefully and whispered, Uncle Patrick, can you help me rescue Gloria? As long as you can help me, I will be very grateful to you. Peter pinched his chin, thought for a while, reached out to the other party and stroked her hair, and asked, do you know who Gloria has offended? I don't know, but she said that there are fallen angels looking for me. Listening to the other party's words, Zatanna became more and more suspicious that it was Mammon who took Michael away. Chapter 854 Teresa fights the angel. Teresa felt a little sad as she watched the teacher who accompanied her and taught her how to summon creatures from hell disappear. She walked to the edge of the ruins, picked up a piece of cloth from a nun's uniform from the rubble, and held it tightly in her hand. Looking up at the moon in the sky, Teresa secretly vowed that she would avenge Gloria. Peter, who was next to her, used his perspective eyes to take a look under the ruins. Although he did not find Gloria who had disappeared, Peter found that the nuns and the dean were hiding in the basement buried by the ruins. It seems that the archangel should have moved all of these people to the basement before the battle for their safety. After seeing that someone was trapped, Peter called Officer Chandler to clean up the mess. The next day, early morning. Padwick Farm. Raven was going to buy something, but suddenly found a luxury car parked outside the farm gate. Then Benji, who was wearing a suit and looked like a successful person, got out of the car. Excuse me, is this Padwick's house? Raven asked him curiously. Who are you looking for? I'm looking for Miss Zatanna, the man in a suit and tie said with a smile. I'm her good friend. Because she left Las Vegas in a hurry, her phone couldn't be reached, so I came to see if she was okay. Since the phone couldn't be reached, how did you know she was here? Raven continued to ask. Benji fell silent. Okay, Zatanna is here, I'll take you in. Seeing that the other party was so boring, Raven lost interest and took him into the farm. Dad, Zatanna's boyfriend is here, Raven shouted in the farm before entering the door. Zatanna came out angrily after hearing the voice. What nonsense is this Raven talking about? Last night, because she was thinking about the Archangel Michael all the time, she didn't sleep well all night, and now she is catching up on sleep. As soon as she went downstairs, she saw Benji in a suit and tie walking in. She was slightly stunned and looked at him in surprise. No, I told you to ask your godfather for his opinion before going on a date, and you actually came to my godfather's house? Meanwhile, Teresa and Joan were shopping with Persephone in the supermarket. Persephone went to the counter to ask the clerk about something, and asked Joan and Teresa to choose the products they liked in the supermarket. Joan quickly calmed down. Although it was important to find Gloria, life had to go on. Joan was temporarily living in Peter's house, living with everyone while looking for the missing Gloria. Teresa's red bow hairpin was reflected on the glass of the refrigerator, and the small cart was piled with strawberry cream puffs and lollipops of various colors. The freezer suddenly made an unnatural hum. The little witch stopped on tiptoe to get the top layer of chocolate pudding. The frost on the surface of the freezer was falling down with a click. Teresa, realizing that something was wrong, turned around and felt the ominous breath in the air. After a pause, she immediately walked towards Jean, ready to pull her away quickly. Swoosh, 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 3 ice cones flew past her ears. The middle-aged woman who was originally selecting steak tilted her head back, her facial skin peeled off like an eggshell, and wings grew on her back. Seeing this scene, Teresa realized that something was wrong and immediately rolled into the snack shelf area. The potato chip bags on the shelf were twisted into pieces by the silver energy. This is a limited flavor. Teresa pulled out a rose-carved pistol from the hidden pocket of her skirt and pulled the trigger with a bang. The recoil made her wrist numb. The bullet exploded on the angel's breastplate, sparking holy light. The second winged angel descended from the ceiling, and the spear pierced through the three-layer shelf, stabbing at her with a bang. Teresa bit open the lollipop and held it in her mouth, stepped on the collapsed shelf and jumped up, and a bullet hit the fire sprinkler head. After the fire sprinkler sprayed water, the supermarket was instantly in chaos. Soon more angels arrived. With a whoosh, Teresa's arm was cut by the blade of light, and blood oozed from her calf. She pulled off her hairband, and her long black hair suddenly swelled up and entangled the steel beams of the ceiling, swinging her towards the cooked food area. The angel's light spear blew the roast chicken cabinet into a fireball. Teresa twisted in the air and shot, and the explosive bullet accurately hit the hanging ham, and the burning meat fell on the angel's wings like raindrops. After the attack, Teresa fell into the pile of puffed food and took the opportunity to get into the broken freezer and throw the frozen salmon at the chasing angel. Taking advantage of the moment when the angel swung the spear to smash the frozen fish, she recited the spell she had just learned. Glacies. The scattered ice chips turned into mist to cover her figure. Taking advantage of the opponent's vision being blocked, the two guns fired at the same time, and Teresa completed the reloading while sliding on her knees. The bullet pierced the angel's body and fell to the ground with a plop. After dealing with the nearest angel, Teresa pulled Jean and ran. Jean asked in confusion, "What happened?" "Aurora, I don't know, those angels must be here to catch you." Boom. When the neon tube exploded above Teresa's head, she was pulling Jean out of the side door of the supermarket. The angel's light blade plowed a 5-meter-long burn mark on the asphalt ground, and the parking lot alarm sounded with a series of shrieks. "It's time to play hide and seek, let Jean hide." The little witch turned over and jumped onto the roof of the SUV, and shot the street lamp with a rose pistol. Although Teresa is young now, her shooting accuracy is not inferior to Boom. After Peter and the adult version of Bayonetta gave her a live demonstration teaching, the good girl also turned into a violent girl. The moment darkness fell, the bursting electric sparks jumped on the angel's wings, and the air was filled with a mixed smell of ozone and burnt feathers. The angel's light spear fell like a meteor shower, and Teresa stepped on the burning car wreckage and flew into the air. Her hair got tangled up in the lead billboard on the mall's exterior wall, and just before she was about to be hit, she shot at the fire hydrant. With a bang, a high-pressure water column rushed towards the angel, and the water fell on the angel and evaporated into a white mist that covered half of the parking lot. The angel that was chasing spread its wings and hovered in the sky. Teresa took a deep breath and calmed herself down. "I have to calm down, otherwise Jean will be in danger. Think about the magic that my father taught me, and the summoning technique that Gloria taught me to summon the Hell Beast." Glancing at the little Shiba Inu hanging on her waist, she suddenly showed a sly smile and threw the last few lollipops in different directions. "Come and catch me." At the moment when the energy crushed the candy, the little witch had slid under a car. Boom! The car exploded violently. Chapter 855 Peter rides a motorcycle on the building and transforms into a soul chariot. The car exploded violently, and thick smoke quickly filled the entire parking lot. Jean, who was hiding behind a fire hydrant, saw the car where Teresa was hiding explode, and she wanted to rush out anxiously. At this time, Teresa had already entered the sewer under the car the moment she got into the car. Before the smoke and dust from the explosion had dispersed, Teresa had already appeared in another direction of the parking lot. Holding the pistol given to her by the adult version of Bayonetta in one hand, Teresa chanted a spell. As she chanted the spell to summon the Hell Beast, the air sent out a wave. At this time, Teresa didn't care about the tedious process required to summon the beast. Now, as long as someone responds to her call, listens to her magic call, and is willing to sign a contract with her, she will be happy. According to the spell taught by Gloria, Teresa chanted this spell softly. Boom! The next second, a ball of fire broke out, and a woman on fire appeared in the air. The woman with burning hair looked at Teresa in surprise after being summoned by Teresa, and immediately released a ball of fire towards the angel, then flew over. Teresa was stunned at the burning woman in front of her. Isn't this the female demon who fought with Zatanna in the monastery last time? Teresa remembered that the other party said her name was Melissa. She summoned the fire spirit demon from last time? How could she sign a contract with her to fight? Teresa suddenly fell into a dazed expression. Could it be that Gloria had signed a contract with the other party in advance, so the spell she taught her to summon the Hell Beast could summon the fire elemental demon? Considering that Gloria's identity is the Archangel, it doesn't seem strange that he can do this. Just as Teresa was thinking about why the Hell Beast she summoned was a fire elemental demon, bang! Melissa's flames swallowed the angel. But then more angels came here, trying to catch Jean hiding behind the fire hydrant. Buzz! Just as Teresa was about to stop the rest of the angels, the roar of a motorcycle sounded outside. Then, in the shocked eyes of Teresa and Jean, they saw Peter riding a motorcycle and rushing over. With his right hand releasing a stream of divine energy to repel the nearest angel, Peter rushed to the stunned Jean and put Lolly on the back seat of the car. Then Peter's motorcycle moved quickly to Teresa's side like a flash of lightning. Dad, Teresa stared at Peter blankly, not knowing why Peter would appear here on a motorcycle. Good job, Teresa, but we have to go. Get on. He stretched out his hand to his daughter, motioning her to get on quickly. Peter had been talking to Jonathan and his wife at the Kent farm before, and after receiving Persephone's call, he immediately rushed to the scene. As for the motorcycle he was riding, it was originally parked near the supermarket, and he rode it directly as a means of transportation. Yet, nodding heavily, Teresa grabbed Peter's hand and jumped on the motorcycle. After taking the two little girls with him, Peter immediately drove out. The police nearby had already arrived. In order not to expose himself and the two little girls, Peter took the two away from here under the cover of a motorcycle. After Peter drove the motorcycle out of the parking lot, the police quickly arrived and surrounded the scene. Dad, are we safe? Sitting on the front seat of the motorcycle, Teresa shouted to Peter in the wind. Not yet, Teresa. Jean, hold on to me. Peter asked Jean on the back seat to hold on to him. He glanced at the rearview mirror and saw another angel chasing him. This thing is really haunting. Black sunglasses were conjured up and put on his face. Peter turned his eyes to the front and twisted the throttle. The engine roared like a dragon awakening. Then, in the shocked eyes of Jean and Teresa, the motorcycle drove to the vicinity of an office building. Sit tight. As Peter spoke, the front wheel of the motorcycle rolled over the glass curtain wall of the building. The runes on the surface of the tire, lit up with a dark red light, 2 rows of burning purple flames, exploded on the 90-degree vertical wall. Hold on tight to my waist, little one. The arc of purple flames illuminated the arc of Peter's mouth. Joan of Arc reacted and immediately grabbed the belt around his waist with her hands. Amid Joan of Arc's fearful screams, the whole motorcycle suddenly drifted on the surface of the glass curtain wall. Bang! The angel chasing behind smashed the glass, and its wings got stuck in the steel structure and splashed golden blood rain. When the motorcycle rushed to a height that made Teresa dizzy, it suddenly took off. Peter took the pistol engraved with rose patterns from Teresa's hand, and with a bang, the gunshot shattered the angel descending from the clouds. The car body flipped 270 degrees in the air, and the rear wheel accurately ran over the angel that was hit. In the sparks of the collision between metal and holy light, Peter hung upside down and fired alloy bullets, blasting away all the angels below. After killing the chasing angels, Peter controlled the motorcycle to flip over and let the motorcycle fall freely. Bang! Finally, the motorcycle landed on the rooftop of a nearby building under Peter's control. Half a minute later, the angels that were chasing them had been completely killed. The two little girls were still sitting on the motorcycle, looking as if they had not recovered. Peter had just ridden his motorcycle on the building, and the two little girls, who had never experienced this before, were still nervous. Are you all right? Teresa, Joan, looking at the two little girls who were in a daze on the car, Peter asked them, Are you all right? Yes, sir. Joan swallowed her saliva and got off the car. She felt her feet were a little weak, and she might fall down if she took a few more steps. Mr. Patrick, how did you do it? I mean, flying in the sky on a motorcycle. Joan's face was full of curious admiration. This is a bit complicated. This is the secret of magic. Magic. Hearing Peter's words, Joan wanted to ask Peter if he could teach her. She also wanted to be like Mr. Patrick, riding a motorcycle handsomely on the streets and buildings, and fighting with these angels chasing her. Although she wanted to ask, she didn't have the nerve to ask in the end. After all, she and Mr. Patrick were not very familiar with each other. Dad, you were so cool just now. Teresa jumped off the motorcycle directly, jumped into Peter's arms and hugged his neck. I want to learn the trick you just did. Joan of Arc also wants to learn it. Don't you think so, Joan of Arc? She winked at Joan of Arc and signaled her to take this opportunity to speak out. Joan of Arc was touched by what she wanted to do being directly said by Teresa. She mustered up her courage and said to Peter, Mr. Patrick, can you teach me? Of course. Peter reached out and stroked Joan of Arc's black hair. After all, Joan of Arc and Bayonetta didn't drive anymore. Would they still be Bayonetta and Joan of Arc? Peter suspected that Joan of Arc in every world would eventually become a motorcycle girl. He remembered that Joan of Arc in the original world, like Bayonetta, was good at using magic to drive various vehicles. But since she also mastered the driving skills of various means of transportation, she drove these means of transportation herself in most cases. In addition to the motorcycle she drove most often, she also used magic to drive a fighter plane like Bayonetta, which lost control over the city because of the appearance of an angel. In the final chapter of the second generation, she also drove Enzo's private plane to send Bayonetta and Baldur to the sacred peak Fimbulwinter. At the end, while driving the plane with magic, she summoned the body of the chaos goddess Seal, whose body was devoured by the monster, on the moving plane. Standing on the top of the building, looking at the sunset on the rooftop, Peter fell into deep thought. Although he killed the angel just now, the other party will definitely not give up. It seems that Jean next to him is really not an ordinary girl, otherwise the angel would not have been looking for her all the time. Teresa saw her father watching the sunset, and she also came over to stand beside Peter, looking at the gradually setting sunset. The wind in the sky tore the sunset into flux, and each ray was soaked in the luster of the sunset, reflecting crimson on the glass curtain wall. At the skyline, the sunset was being cut into irregular shapes by the skyscrapers. "Don't worry, Daddy, I won't let these angels hurt you and Jean, I have a lot of experience dealing with them," Teresa said confidently. "Peter, you are really overconfident in yourself." At the same time, while Peter, Teresa and Jean were dealing with the angels, Zatanna was talking to Benji, who came to see her on the farm. "Is this your home, Zatanna?" Benji, who didn't see Peter, looked around the farm and asked her. He always felt that the farm in front of him exuded a feeling that made him very uncomfortable. It was as if there was some kind of enchantment on this farm, which made him, a person who had signed a contract with the devil, feel very uncomfortable. Especially the birch tree in the courtyard, which exuded a breath that made him dare not look directly at it. "Yes, this is my other home. When I was very young, my father disappeared, and it was Peter who took care of me all the time." Zatanna recalled the scenes of the past. From coming to Smallville as a child, to fighting with the witch child's mother, the witch queen, in the House of Mystery, to returning home many years later, everyone has grown up, but Peter has not changed. During the time when her father disappeared, Peter became a father-replacing role in her heart. "Did your father disappear?" "Yes, he sacrificed himself." Zatanna fell into deep thought. The shadow of her father's self-sacrifice to seal the Three Palaces demon has become her permanent moral shackles. Speaking of which, she once tried to reverse time and space to save her father, but found that the young Zatara didn't recognize her at all. The awkward dinner ended with her father accidentally saying, "A true magician should not be bound by blood," and she smiled and cried to lift the resurrection spell. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 856. Zatanna is getting married. That's a pity. I believe you must be very happy to see you achieve such results. Benji took out a bouquet of flowers and handed it to her. "I didn't attend your farewell performance in Las Vegas, and I forgot to give you anything. This bouquet of flowers is a belated gift." "Oh, thank you." Zatanna took the roses and sniffed them gently. "It smells very unique." She looked up and looked at Benji with some emotion. "You are really thoughtful, Sony." Seeing that Zatanna seemed to be attracted to him, Benji smiled. "So, can I understand it this way? We can go for a drink tonight, of course. I can do anything with you." She gently put her arm around Benji's arm. "Well, then I'm happy to invite you for a drink." Benji stood up and said, "Why don't we go back to Las Vegas? I have a faster way." Zatanna directly recited the anti-speech spell silently, opened a portal, and prepared to take her back to Las Vegas. Entering Las Vegas through the portal, Benji invited Zatanna to his home. Sweet and warm home. Zatanna looked at the other person's home and gave a heartfelt compliment. "It's so beautiful here. I mean, it's elegant and gorgeous." "Thank you, you're welcome. I should thank you. I can't imagine a more wonderful night than here," Zatanna said to the other person with a smile. Although there was a smile on the corners of her mouth, Zatanna felt that her consciousness was a little unclear. She clearly wanted to say that the decoration style of this room was really old, just like the style in the 1960s. But for some reason, it turned into a compliment when she said it. To be honest, I'm really glad that you are willing to come out with me, Zach. Can I call you Zach? Benji continued to ask her with a smile. Although she realized that something was wrong, Zatanna still couldn't control her consciousness, and finally said vaguely, of course. Benji walked to the corner of the room in a good mood. Very good. This means that our relationship has taken a step closer. You know, I like you very much. I like you too, Sony. Listening to Zatanna's words, Benji poured a glass of wine and put a bunch of roses on it. I want to love you well, but do you mind if we have a drink first? He walked over and handed the glass to the other party. Smelling the strange wine, Zatanna's face showed a tangled expression. She had clearly felt that the glass of wine poured by the other party was a little bit wrong. And the bouquet of roses given to her by the other party also smelled unnatural. It was not only the sun and rain that brewed that fragrance. She dared to bet that there was something else in the glass of wine given by the other party. Or some kind of love poison? Here, beautiful, you look a little thirsty. Although she doubted that there was something wrong with the glass of wine, Zatanna's body took the wine uncontrollably. She felt like she was in a dream, her consciousness and body separated from each other. Even though she knew it in her heart, her body was out of control. She watched her body take the glass and was about to drink the wine in the glass. No. No. Don't drink it. Come on, get rid of him. Zatanna, trying to control her body, Zatanna gritted her teeth to stop her arm from holding the glass and stretching it to her mouth. Wake up. Stupid. Just when she was about to drink it, she finally broke free from the control. Wake up. With her roar, Zatanna finally shouted the spell and got rid of the control. With a bang, the glass was thrown to the ground by her, splashing a lot of wine. Zatanna, who had woken up, walked coldly towards Benji, who was retreating step by step with a look of astonishment on his face. A bottle of magic love potion, for real? This trick is not smart, Sony cutie. Zatanna raised her magic wand and pointed it at Benji. I will be performing in your hotel later. You will become a pig or a toad in the next 24 hours, of course. It could also be a slug. Benji was forced to retreat step by Zatanna, but there was no fear on his face. Interesting, Zatanna, but I have other plans. With a confident expression on his face, he said to Zatanna, look carefully. In fact, I am Benjamin Diamond. In the past 60 years, I have been sending pure souls to hell to prolong my own life and continue to control the power of Las Vegas. As he spoke, countless weird and hideous corpses pushed open the door and walked in with a bang. With a light in the room, the astonished Zatanna saw the face of the corpse in the front clearly. It seemed to be Sony's third wife, whom she had seen in the photo. At this time, the other party's rotten right face was still stuck with a diamond face chain from 60 years ago, and the left face was crawling with blood holes where maggots were bulging. The platinum long hair that she was proud of in her life was now entangled with her exposed cervical vertebrae, making a harsh sound as she walked in a twisted posture. She also saw a dancer in the form of a zombie. The dancer wore a sequined skirt with holes corroded, and a rusty dagger stuck in the broken ribs. There were also male zombies, whose fabric had grown into festering skin, and whose swollen bodies were covered with burn marks. For decades, I have hired all kinds of wives, lovers, and employees. Even if they die, their corpses cannot escape the fate of serving me. Even if they die, the corpse of the zombie, with saliva flowing from its mouth, rushed over and knocked Zatanna down. Zatanna wanted to stand up without reacting in time, but was suppressed. The hideous and dry corpse's face, and the fishy smell from its mouth almost made her faint. The smell of decay and copper rust was mixed with a tar smell of expired perfume and casino cigars. Ah! Zatanna roared, and pushed the opponent backwards with all her strength. With a bang, the zombies staggered back. Facing this group of powerful zombies, Zatanna immediately used her anti-speech magic. Zombie. Before she could say the next word humanoid, she was covered by the zombies who pounced on her. Ugh! With her mouth covered, she could only make painful sounds. You broke my heart, Zach. Shaking his head, Benji showed a disappointed expression on his face. There was a time when we got along well, very well, Zach. As he said this, he walked over and took out a bottle of glowing potion. Luckily, I know how to get back to the good times. Crouching down, he asked his zombies to hold down Zatanna's hands and feet and pour the potion into her mouth. While pinching her mouth and pouring the potion into it, Zatanna used all her strength to silently chant, "Water becomes potion," As the potion was poured into her mouth, she turned it into clear water. Benji, who was completely unaware of all this, looked at her with a smile on his face. Very good, stand up, Zatanna, as you command. Zatanna stood up slowly, and then kicked the other person with lightning speed, kicking him out fiercely. With a bang, Benji, who was unable to react in time, was kicked in the abdomen and fell heavily to the ground. Zatanna's boot heel still had the numbness of the recoil when she kicked Benji away, and the lights in the room flickered at this moment. In the flickering light and shadow, the eyeballs in the eyes of the zombies began to jump wildly. Zatanna immediately stepped back and cast a spell on the table. Lift the table. Push back. As the anti-speech magic was recited, the table in the room flew up and smashed towards the zombies. Despite the amazing strength, the zombies were still unable to get close for a while. The sound of bang bang rang out in the room, and the zombies fell to the ground one after another. Benji, who was lying on the ground, took a deep breath as he watched Zatanna dealing with the zombies. He covered his aching abdomen and looked at a bunch of roses that fell to the ground with a wine glass. Whether it works or not, I really don't want to resort to force. He picked up the roses on the ground and threw them at Zatanna, who was fighting the zombies. Zatanna felt a sharp pain in her arm. She looked down and found that it was the rose thorns that pierced her arm. With a thump, she immediately fell to the ground powerlessly. Zatanna, who was kneeling on the ground, covered her arm that was bleeding, with an expression of disbelief on her face. Potion. There are still residues on the rose thorns. Then she felt weak and her mind fell into extreme fatigue. The eyes gradually turned black. Thump. Zatanna, who fell to the ground, completely lost consciousness. Be a good girl and go to sleep. Looking at the unconscious Zatanna, Benji said to the nearby zombies, okay, now demons, if you are kind enough, just keep an eye on her and help my bride prepare. Next, we will have a wedding. The next day, Peter has already found that Zatanna is no longer on the farm. You said that a guy named Sony came to see her, Peter asked Raven. Yes, I guess she went back to Las Vegas. That person seems to be her boyfriend, Raven said to Peter. It is normal for her to go back to Las Vegas with her boyfriend. Dad, no, of course not. Peter shook his head. Even if she used the portal to return to Las Vegas, she should have told me, but so far, I haven't called her. Peter frowned when he said this. I have to go to Las Vegas. Peter stood up and looked at Jean and Teresa on the side. Jean, Teresa, you two follow me. In order to prevent accidents like yesterday, Peter brought a two with him. I'll go with you, Dad. Raven stood up and said she wanted to go too. Siri and Zoo, who were standing by, were also eager to go because of their curiosity about Las Vegas. Sir, can we ride the motorcycle again? When Joan heard that they were going out, her eyes immediately opened wide. She loved riding Peter's motorcycle the most. Chapter 857. Are you willing to marry her? Peter, I don't agree. Shall we ride a motorcycle? Joan looked at Peter with sparkling eyes and said expectantly. Peter listened to Joan's words and looked at the eager little girl. Are you really addicted? Although he complained in his heart, Peter nodded and said to her with a smile, of course. Joan, do you like riding a motorcycle? Yes, I like riding a motorcycle. Joan glanced at Azu and Sherry, who were looking at her curiously, and said in a low voice a little embarrassedly, I also want to be a motorcyclist like you, Mr. Peter. Not a bad ambition. Peter reached out and touched Joan's hair. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Teresa raised her hand with great interest, grabbed Peter's hand and walked out quickly. Azu and Sherry saw the two Lolita holding Peter's hand and leaving, and looked at each other. Dad still dotes on them. Azu said in his heart with some jealousy. Damn. Boom ran down from the upstairs and stamped his feet in disappointment when he saw Peter leaving. Why didn't you take me with you? At the same time, Las Vegas. A grand wedding was being held in a church near the gambling city. Zatanna, the bride, was wearing a white wedding dress and said to her bridesmaids around her, today is the most important day in my life. Standing next to her were the two people she was most familiar with, Wonder Woman and Raven. Wonder Woman was wearing a black and red battlesuit and looked at the bride in front of her with a smile on her face. Congratulations, Zatanna, you have found your own happiness. Raven was wearing a purple and black evening dress and looked in a good mood and said to her, if Dad saw you today, he would definitely be happy for you. Thank you. Zatanna looked at Raven with a happy face. I have always regarded Peter as the most important person in my heart. If I can get his blessing, I think this must be something that will make me happy for the rest of my life. Looking up and looking at herself in the mirror, Zatanna felt a little dazed. When it comes to love, she feels that she has never had much luck. The reason is that she feels that because she has those talents, God wants to balance it out. Now that she is about to get married, she feels that she was too naive to have that idea before. Why can't she have those happiness? She is about to marry a man she just met. Everything is too beautiful to be real. Taking a deep breath, Zatanna, accompanied by Wonder Woman and Raven, holding a bouquet of flowers in her hand, slowly walked out. As she walked, she reminded herself in her heart. Okay, good girl, don't miss those negative things now, focus on the beautiful things, pay attention to the beautiful flowers, not its thorns. Adjusting her mood, Zatanna lifted the curtain and walked outside. At this time, Zatanna, standing in the church, didn't feel anything wrong. The candlelight cruised between the ribs of the Gothic church, lighting the statues of saints on the stained glass windows. Zatanna looked down at the hem of her ivory wedding dress and walked forward with excitement. The church's guest seats were full of guests. All her friends were here, including Clark, Azu, Loki, Star-Lord and Kara, Bruce Wayne, Constantine and other familiar friends. To her disappointment, she did not find the person she was most familiar with. She looked around inside and did not see Peter. She was a little disappointed and sighed slightly. For some reason, she did not see Peter in the crowd, which made her feel a little lost. She looked at Bruce. Zatanna and Bruce had a good relationship. Zatanna was one of the few people who knew Batman's true identity, and Bruce had shown rare vulnerability in front of her, such as allowing her to enter her subconscious through magic and face childhood trauma. However, due to Batman's obsession with responsibility and identity, the two ended in vain. In the original world line, Zatanna used inversion magic to erase Bruce's memory of his serious injury and near death. This behavior of protecting emotions with magic is both gentle and tragic. Then Zatanna looked at Constantine. Constantine is Zatanna's most famous lover in the original world line. The relationship between the two is full of contradictions and attraction. They are allies in the field of magic, but they frequently conflict because of their different ideas. Constantine is used to using black magic and unscrupulous, while Zatanna insists on moral bottom line. In this universe, the two worked together for exorcism and were once very close, but eventually broke up because of Constantine's betrayal, using her hair to cast a spell. After looking at the two people, Zatanna's sense of loss became heavier. Zatanna's guilt for her father John Zatara and her admiration for Peter indirectly influenced her choice of partner. For some reason, she felt something was wrong with her current partner. Just as she was hesitating, Raven and Wonder Woman accompanied her to Benji. Facing Benji, who was smiling and welcoming her, Zatanna extended her hand and let him hold her hand. Together, they walked slowly to the pastor's platform. With a witness of the pastor, they walked onto the pastor's platform. "You look beautiful today, my bride," Benji said to her with a smile. "Thank you, today is my happiest day." Zatanna walked towards the pastor and exchanged rings with a witness of the pastor. The pastor with white hair and a dignified look asked Zatanna, "Zatanna, are you willing to marry him?" Zatanna opened her mouth to say "I agree," but before she could finish her words, she was interrupted by a voice from outside. "I don't agree." The astonished eyes of the people attending the wedding looked in the direction of the voice. Benji's face changed instantly, and he looked outside with an extremely ugly expression. In his unbelievable eyes, he saw an unfamiliar man, with two Lolita, slowly walking into the church where the wedding was held from the church gate outside. "It seems that someone is ruining our wedding," Benji said to Peter, who walked in with a gloomy face. Zatanna was also a little surprised to see Peter coming over. Although she was happy and wanted to approach him intimately to express her feelings. But because her body was controlled by the potion, her behavior was completely different from what she thought in her heart. "Peter, find a seat. I'll meet you at the reception desk," Zatanna said nonchalantly, wanting Peter to find a seat. Peter's expression was a little ugly at this time. He didn't pay much attention, and his family was almost destroyed. Zatanna was going to be deceived into marriage? And it was such a thing? Very good. I'm very angry, and the consequences will be serious. He glanced at Benji, the instigator. Benji immediately became honest after being glared at by Peter with murderous eyes. "Zatanna, what are you doing?" Peter looked at Zatanna with sharp eyes. "Open your eyes and see what's sitting down here." Peter looked at the guests below and shouted at her, "There are dead people here." In his sight, the guests on the benches clapped stiffly. and the seams of their suits and dresses were exposed. The financial director's neck was strung with casino chips into a pearl necklace, and poisonous insects crawled out from under the veil of the swimming pool over. The rotten fingers of a woman sitting closer were mixed with maggots. A wedding ring stood upright on the altar, and the inner wall of the ring was engraved with creeping Hebrew curses. The atmosphere of the whole church looked like a wedding of the dead. Listening to Peter's words, Zatanna's face showed a struggling look. She looked at the guests sitting down, and saw not the dead, but Azu and Clark. At this time, Zatanna's senses became strange, and her lace gloves gradually became transparent, revealing the green spots of magic potion flowing under the skin. The white rose bouquet exuded a strange copper rust smell, mixed with a tequila smell on Benji's suit. The spike on the inner side of the ring that Benji put on her before pierced her ring finger. The pain that suddenly surged up now turned into a numbness, and it was no longer blood rushing in her veins, but a sense of uneasiness. She suddenly had a strong urge to escape from this wedding. To hold Peter's hand and escape from this wedding directly. Will you always regard Benjamin Diamond as your husband? The pastor glanced at Peter and continued to ask Zatanna. It seemed that he wanted to make it a done deal. Joan of Arc, who was standing next to Peter, looked at the room full of zombies and was also afraid in her heart. She reached out and grabbed Peter's hand. Only in this way could she feel a little safe. On the other side, Teresa quietly put her hand on the pistol at her waist. Although Peter forbade her to play with guns, Peter lifted the span after being chased by angels. Teresa was no stranger to the zombies. Although she was young, she had seen Night of the Living Dead. What was Night of the Living Dead? It was the best zombie movie. She had secretly gone to the cinema to watch it without telling her father. It was Saturday afternoon. The young audiences in the town were excitedly shouting, screaming, and playing in their seats, waiting for a movie called Night of the Living Dead to start. They naively thought that they would spend an exciting and enjoyable afternoon in the cinema as usual. It was not until half an hour after the movie started that the whole place became unusually quiet. The young audiences were frightened and the scene was almost silent. A little girl walked through the aisle beside her. She looked very stiff and kept crying in her seat. Now that she had encountered the real Night of the Living Dead, Teresa said she wanted to kill like the protagonist in the movie. Chapter 858 Peter, Zatanna vs. Mammon. Are you willing? Just when Teresa couldn't help but want to shoot at the group of zombies, Peter reached out to stop her. He cast his eyes on Zatanna, who was hesitating. He believed that Zatanna could wake him up. Don't do it yet, Teresa, honey, say I do. Benji urged Zatanna to say yes quickly. Zatanna looked up at Peter with a struggling expression, and a complicated look appeared on her face. Seeing Zatanna's expression, Benji's heart slipped. Could this guy be his rival in love? He subconsciously regarded Peter as a man who had a scandal with Zatanna, and even considered that the other party was Zatanna's boyfriend. Is he your boyfriend? Benji asked Zatanna in a somewhat unhappy mood. No, he is not, he is. Zatanna didn't know how to explain. Looking up and looking at the tenderness in Peter's eyes, Zatanna felt something was touched in her heart. Taking a deep breath, she suddenly had a more specific image of what kind of lover she should choose. In any case, the image of that lover is far from the Benji in front of him. Wake up, Zatanna. Look at Peter's eyes. The current self is definitely not what he wants to see. Calling herself, Zatanna gritted her teeth, and finally broke through the control of the potion and woke up completely. Burn. Before Benji could continue to urge her, Zatanna suddenly made a move. As she recited the anti-verbal magic, Zatanna was completely awake, and a ball of fire rushed towards the other party. Seeing his palm engulfed by the flames, Benji's eyes showed an unbelievable look. He just called you Benjamin Raymond, and now I understand it completely. Zatanna looked coldly at the man who wanted to deceive her into marriage, and then turned around and faced the many zombies below. The images of Azu, Clark, Bruce, Constantine and others before have completely disappeared, turning into their original zombie appearances. Facing the living dead in the audience, she said loudly, I asked the dead to reveal the truth and tell me the name of this person. A corrupted, blue-gray female corpse said to her, he is my husband, Benjamin Raymond. Yes, he is my husband too. Another living dead woman in a wedding dress stood up and said to Zatanna, mine too. More and more female corpses stood up and said that they were once the other's wife. Zatanna walked to the bride and asked her, how long did your wedding joy with Raymond last? The other party replied to her, only a few seconds, and then he was sold to Lord Mammon, in order to prolong his own life. He took our lives and sacrificed our souls to him, just as the living dead women accused Benji of what he did. Benji, as the person involved, gradually changed his expression on his face. With a bang, his clothes burst, and his red muscles swelled. In Peter's surprised eyes, he turned into a demon Mammon with a huge body and a strong sense of oppression. Now, you are mine too. The demon Mammon, who occupied Benji's body, stretched out his hand to grab Zatanna. I don't think so. Zatanna immediately dodged and retreated, and asked him, the fire elemental demon was also your subordinate last time, right? I don't remember any deal with the devil. Mammon looked at her with a smile. Yes, they were all sent by me. As for the deal between you and me, there was indeed no deal before, but you should understand that no one can escape my palm. You will be like everyone else, kowtow in front of me. At the moment Mammon appeared, it started to rain heavily outside. The neon lights of Las Vegas were distorted in the rainstorm. Zatanna took a deep breath and prepared for the battle. The other party was not a good man. Now that Peter was here, she also had some confidence in dealing with Mammon. When Peter saw Mammon appear, his expression became serious. He blocked Teresa and Jean behind him. When the fight starts, Bayonetta, Jean, you two hide, understand? Although somewhat reluctant, seeing the look Peter was giving her, Teresa finally nodded obediently. 10 meters away, Benji, or rather, Mammon who occupied his body, was rubbing the golden cross on his chest with his fingertips. Every time he rubbed it, the cross melted into a pool of liquid gold, and recondensed into an inverted pentagram along the lines of his suit. Your soul is more tempting than a gambler's chips. Mammon's voice was hoarse and harsh, like a coin shaking in a tin can. He raised his hand and snapped his fingers, and the entire casino suddenly spewed out countless golden contract scrolls, interweaving in the air into a golden prison. As soon as Zatanna raised her wand, Mammon had flashed to her left. His pupils split into 2 spinning dice, and what he threw out was not a magic beam, but a materialized greed and desire. Tons of gold coins poured out like shotguns. Clatter, clatter. Facing the opponent's attack, Zatanna immediately turned around to avoid the gold coins. But her cheek was scratched by the broken gold on the edge, and blood dripped. Exclamation mark. Shield light. The light shield condensed by Zatanna's inverted spell barely blocked the second wave of gold coin rain. Mammon sneered and crushed the ground under his feet. Hundreds of contract chains emerged from the cracks, and a skeleton hand was tied to the end of each chain. Zatanna stepped on the vertical wall and ran up. The chains shattered the glass behind her, and countless fragments reflected Mammon's figure. Facing the opponent's attack, Zatanna's magic wand tipped true burning Latin letters in the air, exclamation mark. Destroy Mammon's illusion exploded, but his real body had already circled behind her. The fist wrapped in golden mist penetrated the light shield and hit her body heavily. Zatanna immediately retreated, and threw out 3 tarot cards on the way down, the Hanged Man, the Grim Reaper, and the Wheel of Fortune. Little clever, Mammon grabbed the Wheel of Fortune card, and the image of Zatanna as a baby suddenly appeared on the card. He licked the corner of the card and pulled the image into a physical entity. A crying baby phantom pounced on her chest. Zatanna's wand trembled for half a second, and finally drew a cold arc, exclamation mark. Dispel. The baby phantom screamed and evaporated, but Mammon took the opportunity to chain the contract to her. At the critical moment, a silver energy shattered Mammon's contract lock. Peter, who broke the contract chain with one blow, slowly walked out of the living dead. You seem to have forgotten me, Mammon. Peter looked at the astonished Mammon and said coldly, or, as the Lord of the Dream Kingdom, should I be ignored like this? Hearing Peter say that he was the master of the Dream Kingdom, Mammon's eyes condensed. Of course, he heard that the Dream Kingdom had temporarily changed its owner. The Sandman handed over his authority to play with a human world. But he didn't expect that he would meet the new master of the Dream Kingdom here. You? Who are you, Peter Patrick? Peter said to him expressionlessly, I'm here today. Sorry, Zatanna can't bow down to you because she's mine, Peter Patrick. Mammon was stunned when he heard the name. No wonder you can easily defeat my familiar, Patrick. You don't understand. No matter who it is, it's impossible to destroy my collection. He was confident in his ability and didn't take Peter, the new sleep demon, seriously. On the other side, 2 little girls watched all this with worry. Do you think the gentleman can beat him? Jean asked in a low voice. Mammon is a big demon. I believe in Daddy. Teresa clenched her fists. At this time, Zatanna found that she had been injured just now, and her vision was filled with blood mist. The substance in the wound was injecting some kind of cold substance into the blood vessels. She saw that her fingers began to become transparent, and dark red appeared under the skin. "I'll help you." Peter, Zatanna, who was already angry, didn't care about the injuries on her body and immediately moved. Mammon was stunned for a moment. She bit her tongue and sprayed blood mist! Bind. The blood beads condensed into inverted runes in the air, entangled Mammon's golden body. This is not an attack spell, but a sacrifice. She used her own blood as a medium to forcibly activate a sacrificial blood magic to attack the opponent. The whole building began to collapse, and countless gamblers' resentful spirits poured out from the cracks, gnawing at the gold on Mammon's body. At the moment Zatanna attacked, Peter also moved. Mammon roared and shattered the blood curse, but Peter had already grabbed Zatanna's falling magic wand, and the tip of the wand, with a blessing of magic and powerful force, stabbed into the inverted pentagram on his chest. Mammon's pupils showed fear for the first time. The soul contracts absorbed by him began to flow back, and the blood vessels burst into sparks like an overloaded circuit. He tried to tear open the space crack to escape, but found that Peter had already laid phase anchors around him. A kind of rune magic imprisoned the surrounding space, reducing all his chances of escape to zero. "You missed the gambler's last move." Peter tore off the chain that Mammon threw at him on his shoulder, letting it turn into gold powder and drift away. All in, Mammon didn't expect Peter to hurt him. Seeing that he was about to lose to Peter, the angry Mammon's body swelled into a giant in the golden light, and the ruins of the casino were crushed into dust. Facing Mammon's attack from the front, Peter did not dodge, but rushed to the heart of the giant. His skin carbonized in the high temperature, but the powerful silver energy accurately pierced into the center of the original inverted pentagram. Mammon let out a scream that shattered the clouds, and countless golden energies burst out of his body. Boom! At the moment the giant fell apart, Peter used magic to wrap Zatanna and the two lolly in a light cocoon, and fell to Las Vegas Boulevard with the explosion. When the two lolly were safe, they found that the original side of the casino had turned into a big pit. Peter stood on a concrete pillar on the ground, with a half-burnt black magic wand stuck beside him. What happened? Chapter 859 Peter, let's make a deal? Joan of Arc asked Teresa next to her with a shocked face. I don't know either. Teresa looked at the situation at the scene and whispered to Joan of Arc, anyway, Daddy must have one. On the other side, Benji, who was buried in the ruins, slowly stood up from the ground. At this time, Benji's body was already in a state of old age. Benji, with a hunched body and white hair, no longer looked as suave as before. He was full of twilight and slowly crawled towards Peter on the ground. Zatanna was protected by Peter before, so she didn't suffer too much damage. Looking at Benji crawling on the ground, she showed an unbelievable look on her face. Is this still the casino tycoon capitalist she knew before? Soon Zatanna suddenly understood. It must be Mammon who took away the other party's ability to stay young, intentionally or unintentionally. Wait a minute, please. Benji's hunched body gradually crawled towards Peter. Please, save me. Don't let that monster take my life. Benji, kneeling on the ground, begged Peter for help. Save you? It's as if you would ask me for help if I were in danger. Without waiting for Peter to speak, Zatanna came up and said angrily. She wanted to beat up this bastard who cheated her into marriage. How could this guy be her most important image partner? Zatanna looked at Peter indignantly. Benji knelt on the ground and continued to beg Peter and Zatanna, please, forgive me, you are my only hope. Zatanna shook her head. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have done it. I'm sorry, I always thought there would be a way out and I could escape from the tiger's mouth. You want to escape from Mammon's palm? It's impossible. As long as you gamble with human souls, he will always find a way to get your heart. Seeing that Zatanna was unwilling to help him, he said anxiously, then destroy it. Turn me into a soulless thing. There is still time. Zatanna frowned as she looked at the other party with a hurried tone. I don't understand what you're talking about. I mean, it's better for you to turn me into anything than to turn me into a lonely soul and suffer endless torture. Zatanna looked at Peter, who didn't say a word and obviously gave her the right to choose, took a deep breath and said, you don't deserve this relief at all. She paused and continued to say to the other party, but if you take the initiative to give up everything in your past and everything in the future, whether it is this life or the next life. As soon as she finished speaking, Benji, who was hunched over, immediately said, I do. The moment he said yes, a rumble sounded from the ground. Padrick, in the buried ruins, Mammon's huge body came out from inside, and his throat exuded a voice that frightened Benji. Hearing Mammon stand up and roar to take revenge on Peter, he immediately rolled and crawled to the side. Seeing Benji trying to escape, Mammon directly stretched out his hand and pointed. Benji turned into a huge adult-sized gold nugget. Looking at Benji, who turned into gold nugget, Mammon nodded with satisfaction. Very good, I turned you into gold nugget and satisfied your desire to become an object, so that your soul and body still belong to me. Mammon made a satisfied sound. Well, staring at this untouchable golden light, fantasizing about the wealth that can never be obtained, the little bugs crawled into the heads of countless people. Great, Mammon talked to himself for a while, and then turned his angry eyes to Peter. Padrick, you angered me. I will defeat you completely and make you my soul collection. Hearing the threat of the guy in front of him, Peter looked unconcerned. I am looking forward to it. Seeing that Peter did not take him seriously, Mammon raised his hand and tore open the void, and thousands of golden daggers poured down. The blade of each dagger was engraved with runes, and it made a piercing scream when it cut through the air. Peter's clothes were cut, but he just spread his palm, and a handful of dream dust rose up and turned into a translucent shield. Ling, ling, ding. The dagger hit the sand shield and burst into sparks, and all the daggers he fired were blocked. Mammon's pupils contracted. He guessed that the sand contained the purest dream fragments of human beings. Then, in the shocked eyes of Jean and Teresa, Peter flicked his fingers and the sand shield exploded into black vines. These vines have no substance, but are condensed from the energy in the dream. When the vines wrapped around Mammon's left ankle, his knees below became rotten bones. Feeling the pain, Mammon roared and tore the vines apart. Hell shook, and Mammon's body swelled into a 10-meter-high golden giant. Anger rolled in his eyes, and a golden torrent gushed out of Mammon's mouth. Be careful. Daddy, Teresa, who saw this scene, shouted anxiously. Boom. Facing the opponent's attack, Peter immediately jumped back to avoid it, and the ground where he landed was corroded into a deep pit. It seems that you have stopped here, Mammon, Peter said as he pressed his palm on the opponent's toes. Cracks suddenly appeared on the gold surface, and with a bang, the giant staggered back under the powerful force. After repelling the opponent, Peter took out the hourglass from his arms. When it was reversed, the time flow rate of the entire space was disordered. Mammon's fist was suddenly stuck in the air and could not continue to attack him. It's time to dream, greedy man. As Peter spoke, the hourglass burst into a galaxy-like glow, and Mammon's huge body was forcibly compressed back to human form. Pale sand came out of the gaps in his golden armor. The sand representing the dream and the hourglass continued to overflow and entangle Mammon. Until the last grain of sand sealed Mammon's mouth, Mammon was completely subdued and unable to move. The sand in the dream has the power of the dream rules, forcibly pulling the other party's consciousness into sleep. On the other side, seeing that Peter finally subdued Mammon, Teresa clenched her fist and cheered softly, and said to Jean, "What do you think? I said a long time ago that Daddy can't lose to this big devil." Zatanna originally wanted to help, but after seeing Peter solve Mammon, she breathed a sigh of relief. Her eyes moved, and she looked at Peter with a complicated look. It turns out that Peter's power is not inferior to that of this big devil. No wonder Mammon is so afraid of Peter. After dealing with Mammon, Peter's consciousness also entered the dream world. Mammon, who was affected by the golden sand, could only let Peter do whatever he wanted in the dream world. Looking at Mammon tied up by vines, Peter asked him calmly, "What do you have to say now?" "Mammon, you can't defeat me, you can only trap me for a while." "Padrick," Mammon shouted at Peter angrily. "Really? But you are trapped by me now. Although I can't kill you in a short time, I can banish you to the dreamland forever." Peter took a step towards him. "But we can make a deal, a truly fair deal that is fair to all." Hearing Peter say that he wanted to make a deal with him, Mammon was a little speechless. As the devil of hell, the lord of hell, and the greed of the 7 deadly sins, he has always been the one who tempted others to trade their souls with him. But what he didn't expect was that the guy in front of him, the new god of sleep, Peter Padrick, actually wanted to make a deal with him. Who of us is the devil? And why is this guy so incredibly powerful? The real sleep demon won't be killed by this guy? He felt a subtle fear in his heart. What deal? After some inner struggle, Mammon finally chose to compromise with Peter. It doesn't seem to be ashamed to surrender to the sleep demon. Even if others know about it, it shouldn't lose his own style. Just use your free soul as a bargaining chip. Peter saw that the other party cooperated and nodded with satisfaction. "You tell me, what happened to Archangel Michael?" Why are those angels looking for a little girl? Peter asked him about why the angels wanted to capture Joan of Arc. Hearing Peter's question, Mammon was stunned for a moment, and then stared at him with complicated eyes. Who are you? Just answer my question. After hesitating for a while, Mammon finally said to Peter, this story starts a long time ago. There was a man named Eastman. One night, a glowing person came to his bedside and took the baby from his wife's body. Eastman witnessed everything but dared not speak. Peter listened to the other party and nodded. He guessed that the baby girl was Joan of Arc. It turns out that all angels cannot give birth, except for the archangel Michael. Michael was given the power of creation by God. After failing thousands of times, Michael finally made the human woman Barbara Eastman pregnant with a child. Well, what happened to the child afterwards? The other party's words could explain why Joan of Arc was Michael's daughter. The glowing guy is a fallen angel. He appeared at the bedside of the Eastman couple and took away the baby. I don't know who this fallen angel is. I just heard that he kept the ovaries of his wife, Barbara, and then gave the baby to a couple to adopt. That's all I know. I think the angels you mentioned who are looking for the little girl should be following the command of the fallen angel to find the daughter of Michael. This is why so many angels were dispatched. Listening to the other party's story, Peter nodded slowly. It turned out that a fallen angel took action. As for the fallen angel, which one could it be? Chapter 860. Dad, today is the most unforgettable day in my life. If that fallen angel catches Michael, will he be in danger? Peter continued to ask him after thinking about which fallen angel to no avail. I don't think so, because Michael has half of God's power in his body, that is, the power of creation. If that guy kills Michael, then Michael will explode and destroy all creation, so that's how it is. Peter nodded. It all makes sense. He didn't expect that the origin of Joan of Arc, a lolly, was so mysterious. She turned out to be the only human blood created by Michael. At the same time, after listening to the other party's story about the girl's origin, Peter vaguely remembered the memory of the DC world in his previous life. He seemed to have heard of a girl with similar experiences as Mammon. The other party seemed to be the heir to the throne of heaven, the daughter of Michael Demiurge, Archangel Michael, who possessed the abilities of atomic manipulation, magic, immortality, omniscience and omnipotence. And the other party is one of the most powerful characters in the DC universe, second only to the Supreme God. Could this character be Joan of Arc? I didn't see that Joan of Arc would become the most powerful character in the DC universe. It would be interesting if my daughter's Joan of Arc would be the new god. It seems that our deal was very pleasant. After thinking for a while, Peter raised his head and said to him. At the same time, he handed over a contract. I am very satisfied with your answer. In this case, our deal is successful. In reality, Teresa and Joan of Arc had already walked to Peter's side. Unexpectedly, as soon as the two came over, they saw the sand-controlling Mammon disappear. Then, in the astonished eyes of the two, Mammon, who had fallen into deep sleep, woke up. Damn it! Seeing the other party wake up, Zatanna immediately prepared for battle and condensed a ball of flame energy. Unexpectedly, Mammon did not take action, and a huge flame rose behind him. Retreating to the portal behind the flame, Mammon said to Peter with a calm face, "We will meet again, Peter, let's make a bet." Without waiting for Peter to answer, he disappeared directly into the portal in the flame. Seeing the demon disappear, Zatanna's tense heart finally let go. Peter looked at Zatanna's nervousness, a smile appeared on his lips, and asked him, "I guess your contract with Raymond is over?" Yes. Zatanna was in a good mood and looked at the huge gold nugget that Benji had turned into on the ground. Yes, it should be difficult to negotiate business with a large piece of gold. Zatanna walked to Peter excitedly and hugged him. "Peter, thank you, I owe you a lot." When she was excited, she kissed Peter on the face. Being attacked by Zatanna, Peter glanced at the lolly who was curiously watching the two of them on the side, pretending to be indifferent, shrugged his shoulders and said to the excited magic girl, "This is the meaning of family, isn't it?" "Yes, the meaning of family," Zatanna said in a trance. Hearing Peter say this, countless past scenes flashed through her mind in an instant. She had always lived in the shadow of her father, John Zadara. Her father's feat of self-sacrifice to seal the Three Palaces demon not only gave Zatanna the mission of Guardian of Magic, but also became the source of her eternal guilt. She once reversed the taboo to resurrect her father, but found that the resurrected Zadara no longer understood her sacrifice. This sense of tearing made her realize that a true family is not only the continuation of blood, but also the entrustment of ideas. Now Peter's unconditional trust made her realize the true form of family in the eyes of magicians. It can be the entrustment of ideas, but also Peter, who has always been the glimmer of redemption in her life. With a happy smile on her lips, Zatanna hugged Peter's arm and said, "Don't go back to the farm yet, Peter. There is a great show in Las Vegas today. Shall we go and see it together?" "Great show?" Peter looked at the collapsed building in front of him, listened to the sound of the police car approaching in the distance, nodded and said, "Of course." On the other side, Teresa and Jean, hearing that they were going to watch the show, immediately came over happily. For the two lolly, there is nothing more interesting than watching a show. "Dad, can I take this piece of gold?" Teresa said that she really wanted the gold that Benji had turned into. "Of course I will take it away, but it's not you who will take it, but me." Peter used the power of the ruby to send the huge piece of gold to a safe place. How could such a little lolly have such a big piece of gold? Seeing her gold being taken away by Peter like this, Teresa was a little depressed. The only good thing about her dad is that he is sometimes a little stingy. I heard from Azu that Dad took away all the New Year's money he had when he was a child, and called it keeping it for him. Now Teresa understood. No wonder Daddy could defeat the greedy devil, probably because Daddy is also a greedier person than the devil, right? Although such a daddy also feels safe, it would be better if he was not stingy. Teresa couldn't help but think wildly. Peter didn't know that Teresa had been complaining about herself in her heart. At this time, he was sitting in a casino in Las Vegas. On the left and right were two little lollies who came to the casino to watch the show for the first time. Looking at the extravagant casino, Teresa's heart changed slightly. One day, I will win all the money here. When the time comes, I will hand the money to my father, and he will hug me in shock and announce to others, "My favorite child is Bayonetta. From now on, I declare that Bayonetta will be the heir of the farm." Because this fantasy scene was too happy, she laughed accidentally. Peter looked at his silly daughter and frowned slightly. This daughter won't have any mental illness, right? On the other side. On the stage, the great performance that Zatanna talked about finally began. Looking at Zatanna, who was shining on the stage and exuding a different charm, Peter was stunned. It turns out that the great performance you are talking about is you. You are really rude. Although he complained, Peter still cast his eyes on the stage and watched the performance carefully. The dome of the Las Vegas casino suddenly turned off all the lights, and then the spotlight pierced the center of the stage like a sword. Zatanna's top hat floated and spun in the beam of light. 3 white doves emerged from the shadow of the hat brim, and their feathers turned into flying playing cards as they fluttered their wings. The audience below exclaimed when they saw this scene. Teresa and Jean, who were sitting in the audience, also clapped their hands desperately. After a simple warm-up, it was time for the official magic show. The gilded bird cage in the center of the stage slowly rose. The cage was supposed to be a supporting actress, but now it was curled up with a Bengal tiger. Zatanna's lace gloves brushed against the cage pillars, and the moment the cage door opened, the audience exclaimed. Just when she wanted to escape, the beast turned into thousands of butterflies and rushed to the audience. The lady in the front row exclaimed, and only breathed a sigh of relief when she found out that it was a butterfly. Then she excitedly clapped her hands desperately. This scene instantly stunned the audience. After Zatanna thanked the audience, she turned around, and her high heels stepped on the red carpet of the casino, and the heels hit the ground with a crisp sound. The dome of the casino was decorated with crystal chandeliers, and the reflected light spots moved on the hem of her skirt. Confident, elegant, and mysterious, Zatanna quickly captured the two little girls. Peter was also attracted by her. Speaking of which, this should be the first time he saw Zatanna perform magic as an adult, right? The last time she performed, she seemed to be a girl. In Peter's memory, Zatanna on the stage took off her hat to greet the audience, and the audience burst into warm applause. Next, I have something to say, something very important. Zatanna's eyes swept across the gentlemen in suits in the front row, and finally stopped at the man in the audience, Peter. Tonight, I want to dedicate this magic show to the most important man in my life. He is my driving force and the glimmer of my life. Zatanna smiled at Peter, and then the red velvet gambling table automatically unfolded into a fan shape, and the playing cards floated out from the dark pattern of the tablecloth. Zatanna tapped the queen of spades with her fingertips, and the card turned into a life-size holographic projection. We need some starlight now. Then Zatanna untied the ribbon that tied her hair, and the dark blue silk rose to the dome and suddenly burned, and a nebula burst out from the ashes. The casino became transparent in the flow of the nebula, and the audience found themselves sitting in space. A woman in a backless evening dress sitting in the audience reached out to touch the nebula in front of her, and the next second, she found that the stars disappeared the moment she touched them. Joan of Arc looked at the stars in front of her, her eyes wide open. Wow, Joan of Arc, who was a little excited, made a surprised sound and hugged Peter's arms tightly. I swear, sir, this will be the most memorable day of my life. Me too, Dad, Teresa said to Peter loudly. Thank you for letting me watch such a performance, Dad. I love you more than anyone else. Zatanna on the stage, are you really not mistaken? It's obviously me, a magician, performing on the stage, but you thanked Peter. Zatanna, who was performing magic, was suddenly in chaos. Chapter 861 Bayonetta, Daddy, Bayo, learn how to talk like me. Although Zatanna felt a little unhappy that Teresa and Jean thanked Peter for her magic show, she looked at Peter who was talking to the two girls and smiled. Why should she care about these things? In any case, this magic show tonight was prepared for Peter. Teresa and Jean thanked Peter and she should be happy. She looked up and looked at the bright lights in the city outside the casino. When her father performed in Las Vegas, he probably saw the same lights as her. Although she didn't have her father by her side, she had another man who played an important role in her life by her side. Maybe her luck wasn't too bad. Padrick Farm. The next day, early in the morning. After a crazy night in Las Vegas, Teresa and Jean got up a little late. First it was the Mammon Demon, and then it was Zatanna's wonderful magic show. The two were excited all night, and finally they were taken back to the farm by Peter and forced to go to bed. Dad, the sleepy Teresa came downstairs and saw that Boom and Wei were complaining to Peter. Dad, did you go to Las Vegas yesterday? Boom pouted and said unhappily, why didn't you take me and Wei with you? Going to Las Vegas casino with Dad without the participation of others was a treatment that she didn't even enjoy. Could it be that Bayonetta, the girl with glasses, was more loved by her dad than herself? Boom, with short hair and a refreshing temperament mixed with some heroic spirit, was about to ask Peter for an explanation. After hearing the dong-dong sound from upstairs, she immediately cast her eyes upstairs. As a result, she saw Teresa and Jean walking down from upstairs. Seeing the two of them, Boom immediately rushed over. Bayonetta, Boom called Teresa's name on the farm. What did you say to Dad? Why did Dad only take you to Las Vegas? Seeing Boom's anger directed at her, Teresa glanced at Peter nervously. Seeing Peter standing up and about to speak, Teresa immediately spoke up to stop Boom from saying what he was about to say. Because I'm a witch, Peter's eyes gave her courage, and Teresa mustered up her courage and said to Boom loudly, because I'm the witch of Padrick's farm, witch. Boom showed a surprised expression on his face when he heard Teresa's words. What did you say, Bayonetta? I'm the witch of Padrick's farm, and also my father's witch, Teresa said to her in a firm tone. It is precisely because I am my father's witch that I can do whatever I want and like whoever I like without restraint, even if you hate it, just hate it. Boom was stunned when he heard Teresa's words. Is this girl with glasses so arrogant and stubborn? Boom, who was in a very bad mood, looked at Peter. Although he wanted to punch the arrogant girl with glasses at this time, he was anxious that Peter was still around, so the smart Boom chose the most effective way, to tell his parents. Dad, Boom shouted to Peter with a wrong expression on his face. The meaning was obvious. Dad, look at him ahem. Seeing Boom arguing with Teresa like a child, Peter felt a headache. It seems that Boom's temper is still the same as in his previous life, with a hot temper, and he likes to argue with people at any time, as if he could explode at any time. Okay, as compensation, Boom, Wei, I will take you to Las Vegas tonight, how about it? Peter came over, stroked Boom's short hair and said to her. Hearing Peter say that he would take him to Las Vegas, Boom immediately smiled and hugged Peter without paying attention to Teresa next to him. Thank you, Dad, you are the best dad in the world. Teresa next to him heard Boom imitate her words, and her face suddenly became depressed. She made up her mind to ignore Jinx Padrick in the future. The relationship between the two was pretty good before, but now the friendship boat is overturned, and both decided not to pay attention to each other. Dad, can I ask a question? Star-Lord, who had been a bystander, raised his hand and asked Peter, can I go to Las Vegas? And me, Azu and Siri next to him also raised their hands. The other children are not at the farm now. Raven and her group have already gone to Hogwarts, and Horace followed Raven and the others to visit the magical world. Horace said that he just wanted to visit the magical Hogwarts castle. Of course, if it is convenient, he would chat with Luna, who has become a friend. Peter suspected that the real purpose of this kid was to meet Luna. Could it be that after Mark and Ginny became the objects of the scandal, Horace was going to become a boyfriend and girlfriend with Luna? He remembered that in the original world line, Luna seemed to marry Rolf, the grandson of Newt Scamander, the author of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. After Harry, will there be another couple who were torn apart? Thinking about Horace, Peter fell into deep thought. "Dad, can't I?" Star-Lord asked worriedly, seeing Peter lost in thought and not speaking. He was really worried that his father would go to Las Vegas without him. As a cowboy, Star-Lord, who calls himself Smallwool Ranger, has long wanted to go to Las Vegas. But before, he was afraid of being caught by Peter, so he didn't dare to act. Now if his father takes him, there will be no problem. Star-Lord's words pulled Peter back from his thoughts. Peter glanced at Star-Lord, coughed, and said, "Teacher Martha told me, Star-Lord, that you did very badly in your recent English test, and you haven't prepared your English paper. Maybe you can explain to me why your grades are so bad recently." Hearing Peter mention his grades, Star-Lord suddenly wilted. He was busy with his own research experiments recently, and as a result, he forgot about the English paper. Seeing Star-Lord's dejected expression, Peter nodded with satisfaction. "You are the only one who talks too much? If I don't teach you a lesson, you don't know how many eyes the Horse King has." But at this time, he was somewhat thankful that there were not many children at the scene. If Raven and the other children were still here, he would probably be in a bigger headache. Taking a deep breath, Peter glanced at Zatanna next to him. Zatanna looked at Peter's headache and helpless expression and wanted to laugh, but she finally held back and smiled back at Peter and said to him, "I don't mind returning to Las Vegas and performing a magic trick." Hearing Zatanna say this, Boom and V immediately hugged Zatanna. Long live Zatanna. The next day, Peter took Teresa, Jean, Suri and Zatanna to Winter's Manor. Mammon had previously told him about the fallen angels looking for Michael's son. Peter wanted to know the whereabouts of the kidnapped Michael from Winter's Manor. Boom and the others went to Las Vegas yesterday and were much quieter. They no longer had any objection to Peter taking Teresa around Winter's Manor. "Yes, I've got it done. All the parties are ready. Someone will die in the end, but the balance will be maintained," Baron Winters said to the leopard Merlin sitting in front of the fireplace. Merlin yawned. He was used to Baron Winters' recent nervousness and talking to himself. Baron Winters saw that Merlin did not react, and did not care much. Instead, he stuffed the thick book into the bookshelf. "I can feel that a powerful force is entrenched in this world. He wants to cause trouble. I can feel the evil that is eroding. It is far beyond what we have encountered before." Merlin heard Baron Winters say this, and immediately stood up alertly and cast his eyes on the flames burning in the fireplace. "I can feel that he is coming, and he wants to destroy all balance." As Baron Winters finished speaking, the fire instantly grew. Then, in the blazing flames, Joan of Arc's figure instantly appeared in the flames. Then her figure gradually grew larger in the shadows, and finally whoosh walked out of the flames of the fireplace. Being teleported to this wonderful house by Zatanna, Joan of Arc curiously looked at the furnishings in the surrounding rooms. You, Baron Winters looked at Joan of Arc in shock. Then, in his astonished eyes, Peter, Zatanna, Suri and Teresa, several people walked out of the flames one after another. "Good evening, Baron Winters, you seem surprised to see us." Peter stretched out his hand to him. Peter. Podrick, with an incredible look in his eyes, he held Peter's hand in disbelief. "Why are you here?" And Zatanna, "This is a long story. In short, we need your help," Peter said to him while sitting down on the sofa next to him. Teresa, who was very curious about this, followed Peter to the sofa and kept her eyes on the leopard Merlin by the fireplace. For some reason, this magical animal in front of her eyes has been staring at the little Shiba Inu in her arms without blinking, and has been making a gurgling sound. It seems that the leopard in front of her eyes may attack the little Shiba Inu in her arms at any time. Peter also noticed the abnormality of the leopard Merlin. Seeing his daughter's nervous look, he took the little Shiba Inu from Teresa's hands and covered up the magical beast's aura that seemed to be emanating from it. "Who is she?" Baron Winters suddenly cast his eyes on Jean, who was looking at the bookcase next to him, and asked Peter. Chapter 862 Jean's Awakening, The Final War. "She Peter looked towards Jean and found a little girl with short black hair looking at him awkwardly. Peter stood up, walked to Jean, gently stroked the little girl's short black hair, and said to Baron Winters, "Her name is Elaine? Elaine Bellick? Yes, it's her. I feel a strong power from her. It's an evil power that does not belong to this world." Baron Winters looked at Jean with horror in his eyes. "Peter, you said that last time to Raven, and now you are still using the same words to face Jean. You old man, don't you have anything else to say?" When Jean heard what Baron Winters said, she pulled Peter's clothes in fear. "Don't worry," Peter gently held Jean's hand, which was a little sweaty, and whispered to her, "This old wizard always likes to exaggerate and be mysterious." Peter smiled at Jean, then took her hand and walked to Baron Winters. "Elaine is the daughter of Archangel Michael, and now this Archangel has been kidnapped by a fallen angel." Peter told Baron Winters his purpose. He hoped to find Michael. Michael's daughter. Hearing Peter's words, the Baron's face showed a look of shock. Why is it that every time Peter Padrick brings a girl, it is not a normal human girl? Last time it was Raven, the daughter of the Three Palaces demon, and now suddenly there's the daughter of Archangel Michael. So, what is going on? Baron Winters asked Peter after recovering from the shock. Siri, who was standing aside, looked at Baron Winters with a goatee, and whispered to Zatanna, "Is this magician powerful?" While asking Zatanna, she looked out the window and saw the lush forest and walls. The manor is located in a remote forest in the New England region of the United States. The exterior is a Gothic Revival building. The towering spires, stained glass windows and vine-wrapped stone walls create a gloomy atmosphere. In addition to the bookcase, there are many portraits in the room. They look like portraits of the family from past generations, and the expressions of the characters in the paintings change with the changes in reality. In response to Siri's inquiry, Zatanna explained, "Yes, Baron Winters is a great magician. His real name is unknown. His family history can be traced back to the European nobility in the Middle Ages. He gained immortality due to a tragic event involving magic, but the price was to be trapped in his own manor forever and become the guardian of time and space." After listening to Zatanna's explanation, Siri's expression was a little sad. The guardian of time and space, trapped in his own manor forever. Siri said to herself in her heart, "I am not a cursed person trapped in time and space." Siri's ability is not completely controlled by her will. She has accidentally traveled to dangerous time and space, such as being caught in a blizzard or another world, due to the loss of control of her power many times, and even caused injuries or deaths to people around her. Frequent use of abilities will make her exhausted and may even endanger her life. The blood of the ancients gave her not only power, but also a destiny to save the world. Siri yearns for freedom and the life of ordinary people, but her ability is destined to make her the focus. She once hoped to become a witcher like Geralt, but fate pushed her into a greater conflict. Not only that, in order to protect her, Geralt, Yennefer and others had to separate from her, causing her to wander alone for a long time. Siri always believed that her ability was the root cause of this separation. And when traveling through different worlds, Siri has witnessed countless tragedies, such as the destruction of the other world and the death of friends, and these experiences have deepened her hatred or confusion of abilities. But now, Siri looked at Peter, who was talking to Baron Winters. If it is said that the only thing she gained from constantly traveling through the world is to meet Peter, a different existence. Only by staying with Peter can she feel that her emotional needs are met, love and trust, an emotion she has never felt in other worlds. That's a long story. Peter didn't know that Siri had thought of so many things in a flash, from Baron Winters' cursed eternal life to his own fate. At this moment, he told Baron Winters in detail about how Teresa met Jean, how the two were chased by angels, and then about the fallen angels that Mammon told him. "You mean that the angel Michael created her, and she also has the power of creation in her body?" the Baron asked Peter in surprise. "That's the only explanation. I think this is why the group of angels want to get her." Peter shrugged and said to him, "She is a kind of future, a power of destruction, and even more a power of innovation," the Baron murmured in a low voice. At the same time, his eyes looked at Jean, who was a little uneasy. "About a fallen angel who captured Michael, do you know who it is?" Baron Peter asked about who the fallen angel who kidnapped Michael was. "I don't know, but maybe we can go to the scene to investigate." In the monastery, Baron Winters had just finished speaking, and in the astonished sight of everyone, a familiar image of a monastery appeared in the flames. Seeing the familiar image of the monastery, Joan of Arc immediately trotted over, held Peter's hand and looked at the flames. Teresa came over, held her good friend's hand and comforted her. "Don't worry, Joan of Arc, we will always be with you." Baron Winters looked down at the two Lolita. Seeing the faint magic emanating from Teresa, he showed a slight surprise on his face. He turned his eyes away from Teresa and continued, "My manor exists outside the long river of time. We can step over the river of time at will and see the story that happened at that moment." As he spoke, the image in the flame changed. A black shadow stepped out from behind the pillar, and the black wind swept across the pillar, and the hard pillar broke immediately. The black shadow held a crossword in his left hand, shining in the moonlight. Listening to the words of the black shadow, who called himself Sander Fang, Gloria turned around abruptly. At the moment she turned around, a golden energy shot out from her sleeves and attacked the black shadow directly. The shadow chuckled and chanted a series of Hebrew spells. The chains twisted in the air into venomous snakes and bit back at their master. Gloria's white robe was instantly scorched. Seeing Gloria defeated, Jean's face showed an expression of disbelief. "Is this guy a fallen angel named Sander Fang?" Zatanna's face showed a puzzled look. Why had she never heard of this name? Under Zatanna's gaze, Sander Fang continued to attack. "It seems that you don't know your situation yet." Sander Fang raised his hand and condensed a ball of light. Gloria tried to stand up, but Sander Fang's movements were faster. With a boom, he rushed her into the church. A deafening sound rang out in the night. After defeating Gloria, Sander Fang suddenly raised his head and looked at Peter and others who were watching the flame image. "Elaine, you should have seen this. Let me tell you, if you want to save your father, go to the abandoned iron smelting factory in the central city of Metropolis. I will be waiting for you there." Seeing that the guy in the flames could actually sense her peeping, Zatanna said in shock, "This fallen angel can actually see us? This is clearly something that happened in the past, but he can actually see us in the future." Peter frowned and looked at Sander Fang taking the unconscious Michael away, with a serious look on his face. "This shows that this guy is not an ordinary fallen angel." "Yes," Baron Winters nodded, agreeing with Peter. "It seems that this fallen angel has the ability to control magic and bind and control high-level angels. His power is not simple, otherwise Michael would not care so much." Joan of Arc looked at Gloria, who was taken away by the flames, and asked Peter with a worried face, "Mr. Patrick, will you go to the factory?" "Of course." Peter stroked her hair. "If I don't go, you will definitely go secretly. I promised Gloria that I would take good care of you, and I will naturally not watch you take risks alone." Listening to Peter's words, Joan of Arc bit her lip and thanked him. "Thank you, sir. Thank you for your help." She really wanted to run alone just now. If Peter didn't take her. Late at night. Abandoned factory. There was a drizzle in the sky, and there was a chill in the air. Peter braved the rain and entered the factory. The interior of the factory seemed to be abandoned and eroded by time, and the huge iron roof was covered with rusty holes. The lights in the distance penetrated from the cracks, cutting out pale thin lines. Rusty conveyor belts and mechanical wreckage were stacked crookedly in the corners. Dark red stains condensed on the gears and chains, like a mixture of dried blood and grease. A piece of open space was cleared in the center of the factory. A huge inverted pentagram array was drawn on the ground with charred ashes and salt. A rusty steel column stood at the center of the array. Archangel Michael was tied to it with silver-gray chains, and the surface of the chains was engraved with Hebrew spells. Whenever he struggled, the runes flashed with cold light, suppressing his divine power into weak gasps. Boom, boom, boom. Peter's footsteps came slowly from outside. Michael, who heard the sound, raised his head with difficulty. Seeing the familiar figure, he was stunned. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 863. Bayonetta's little Shiba Inu is alive. Gloria, the Archangel Michael, who heard the voice, was shocked when he saw Peter's appearance. He didn't expect that the one who came to save him in the end would be Peter Patrick. Peter, Michael, who was tied to the cross, raised his head and called out Peter's name in surprise. "I didn't expect that Sister Gloria would be the famous Archangel." Peter smiled at her, "and our Archangel would be kidnapped. Although I don't care about you becoming a woman, I think you might be able to explain to me why you became a woman, and a charming woman." "Sorry, I didn't mean to, but, at that time, I had to live under a different identity." Michael smiled bitterly at Peter. Before Peter could speak, a gray-haired old man suddenly appeared on the second floor of the abandoned factory. The old man, who exuded a powerful aura, was slightly stunned when he saw Peter. The old man, Sander Fang, didn't care, but looked at the tired Michael and said to him, "Look, Michael, the sword of heaven, the darling of God, you don't look like an archangel at all. Now, Michael, tell me where Elaine Bellick is. Just tell me where she is and I will spare your life." "No. Don't even think about it." As expected, Michael immediately rejected the other party. "We should all know that you have no choice, Michael." After speaking harshly to Michael, he turned around and said to Peter, "You must be Peter Patrick, I've heard of you. The sleep demon of the Endless family fulfilled an agreement and you became the master of the new Dream Kingdom. It's surprising that other members of the Endless family didn't bother you." The silver-haired, imposing old man, Sander Fang, smiled sarcastically. "Although you are powerful, Peter Patrick, you can't get away unscathed this time." "Really?" Peter said calmly, "although I don't know where you, the fallen angel, came from, but between the two of us, you are the one who can't get away unscathed." As he spoke, Peter walked forward. As he stepped forward, the momentum gathered on his body continued to grow. "Very good, I want to see, Peter Patrick, how you are qualified to become the new Sandman." As he spoke, he waved his hand forward, and countless angels with wings suddenly appeared in the factory. After summoning countless angels, he looked at Michael with sharp eyes. "Do you know what I want?" "Michael, I want to create my own angel army to fight the second war in heaven, and Elaine, who was born by you, is my helper. I took away her mother Barbara's ovaries and asked her to help me create angel warriors. I took Elaine and gave her to the Bellick couple for adoption. The one who attacked you is the angel warrior I created. The current Elaine is of great significance to the upcoming war in heaven." Sander Fang told Peter and Michael about his plan without hesitation. Without waiting for Peter and Michael to react, he waved his hand. Under his control, groups of angel warriors rushed towards Peter. Seeing the angel warriors rushing towards him, Peter immediately responded. An angel swung his sword and chopped, but the blade weathered the moment it touched Peter's forehead. Then a powerful force acted on the other party's body. With a bang, the angel holding the sword was suddenly hit on the ground. Then Peter used the silver energy of the gods to create a huge net emitting silver light. In the shocked eyes of Michael and Sander Fang, the network composed of the silver energy of the gods surrounded the other angels with a bang. Boom, the huge silver net directly surrounded several angels and dragged them into the sky. After knocking away the nets created by several angels using the energy of the gods, Peter used the energy of the gods to condense a whip and hit Sander Fang. Facing Peter's attack, Sander Fang's eyes were fixed. He didn't expect Peter's strength to be far beyond his expectations. Snap, caught off guard, he was hit by Peter's whip and flew out heavily. On the other side, Teresa, Joan of Arc, Zatanna, and Ciri looked at the scene in front of them with shocked expressions in their eyes. Joan of Arc didn't expect that Mr. Patrick would not lose to these angels. He also used her whip to whip this hateful guy called Sander Fang away. Clenching her fists, Joan of Arc couldn't help but cheer for Peter. Just as she was about to speak, the army of angels in the factory also rushed over and attacked them. Damn it! Seeing the army of angels attacking her, Zatanna cursed inwardly and immediately released magic to repel the enemy. Back off! As she released the anti-verbal magic, the black magic instantly rushed towards the enemy. Ciri drew out her steel sword and rushed towards the army of angels with agile movements. "Don't worry, I will protect you, Joan of Arc." Taking a deep breath, Teresa stood in front of Joan of Arc, saying that she would definitely protect her. Who? Accompanied by the sound of shattering glass, several angels with wings and hoods swooped down from the broken glass skylight. The wings of these angels cut through the moonlight, like a group of silver-white scalpels piercing the sky. Protecting Joan of Arc behind her, Teresa jumped forward suddenly. But for some reason, as she jumped forward, the little Shiba Inu in her arms suddenly jumped out. Seeing the little Shiba Inu doll jumping out, Teresa shouted anxiously. "Little Shiba Inu." When Teresa did a backflip, the call stopped abruptly. She looked at it with astonishment, and suddenly a strange summoning array appeared where the little Shiba Inu doll fell. Then with a boom, the air exploded. At the moment when the dark purple smoke exploded, the obsidian-like giant claws tore open the space and slammed the three angels into the concrete wall. The monster that emerged from the smoke was as big as a car. It looked like a black panther but had the pointed ears of a lynx. The tip of its tail was burning with green fire, and its golden pupils stood up, staring at the army of angels that were rushing over with great momentum. Seeing her little Shiba Inu doll suddenly turned into a powerful monster that could attack angels, Teresa was stunned. Was her doll possessed by some monster? At this time, Teresa finally understood why her little Shiba Inu doll moved in the dream world. It turned out that it was alive. Jean, Sari and Zatanna were also stunned. When did Teresa's little Shiba Inu doll turn into such a ferocious monster? Smash them! Teresa immediately ordered the monster transformed by the kitten. She jumped onto the back of the monster and wrapped her fingers around the silver mane behind its ears. After recovering from the shock, Teresa quickly adapted to her identity as a master. Even if her little Shiba Inu turned into a monster, she was still her doll. No matter what the little Shiba Inu was, she had the right as a master to give orders to the little Shiba Inu. Then the little Shiba Inu purred, and the factory floor suddenly rose with countless stone spikes, piercing the angels hovering in the sky. The little Shiba Inu monster stepped on the fallen corpse and jumped onto the steel frame. Teresa exerted a little strength, and her sheepskin boots bounced up on its back, and she drew out the 2 rose pistols that she had been hiding in her waist. A glimmer of light flashed across the lens of her glasses, and Teresa immediately pulled the trigger. Bang! 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 The moment the bullet hit the angel's armor, the little Shiba Inu's tail suddenly swelled and grew larger, rolling the person who was shot to the mouth. Purple arcs burst out when the magic beast's fangs bit, and the angel's armor was bitten to pieces by the beast transformed by the little Shiba Inu. Teresa took the opportunity to climb on its front paws and swing, avoiding the slash of the angel rushing over. With an angry shout, Teresa kicked away the approaching angel and pulled the trigger of the pistol repeatedly. The sound of bullets continued to sound in the night. The magic patterns on the body of the little Shiba Inu magic beast suddenly glowed during the battle. The front paws of the magic beast suddenly grew larger and glowed. Teresa hung upside down under the little Shiba Inu magic beast, and continued to attack as the little magic beast turned. The bullets she fired swept across the field, and each shot accurately hit the angel. The little Shiba Inu's tail turned into a meteor hammer, smashing the fish that escaped into the hard ground. Boom! 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 With the cooperation of the 2 people and the beast who were in tune with each other, the surrounding angels kept falling. The sound of the angels hitting the ground kept ringing around. Joan of Arc was completely stunned when she saw the scene in front of her. It turned out that her little friend was so powerful. The little Shiba Inu doll that had always been inconspicuous in Teresa's arms could turn into a huge monster. And Teresa's movements just now were so handsome that she felt her heart pounding. Come on, Joan of Arc, who was hiding in the dark corner, was shocked by the scene in front of her and clenched her fists in a low voice to cheer for Teresa. Come on, Mr. Patrick, come on, Aurora. Joan of Arc, who was holding her breath nervously and cheering for Teresa, did not notice that an angel suddenly appeared behind her. The angel appeared from the dark shadows and rushed towards Joan of Arc, who was unaware. No, Sari was originally fighting with the angel. When she saw that Joan of Arc was attacked, she immediately put down the angel in front of her and rushed towards Joan of Arc. She originally thought that she would witness another tragedy, seeing the people she protected die or get injured because of her powerlessness, and the feeling of self-blame almost broke her heart. Bang! The next second, before she could attack the angel, she saw the angel who attacked Jean fly away. Then, from the darkness, a winged man slowly walked out. Chapter 864 Lucifer appears. Siri looked at the man who repelled the angel and saved Jean in shock. Jean stood up in confusion, looked at the repelled angel, and then looked at the man who saved her. The other party had short silver-white hair, blue eyes, deep facial features and a cold and elegant feeling. The outer match was a well-cut black suit, paired with a dark red tie or scarf, and occasionally embellished with silver accessories. He had both a majestic temperament and a lazy temperament. The wings behind him were 6 wings, holding a silver cane with a ruby on the top. The attack released by the other party just now was released by the ruby in his silver cane. Who is he? Siri put away the steel sword, while cautiously looking at the mysterious and elegant man, and asked Zatanna. Zatanna looked at this mysterious man, and a look of shock appeared on her face. She had completely guessed who the other party was, but she didn't dare to say his name. The other party's appearance and dress, there is no doubt that it is Lucifer. Lucifer, that man. She knew how terrible the other party was. Lucifer is an extremely scary guy. This guy has supreme arrogance and wisdom. As God's most perfect creation, Lucifer is extremely arrogant and despises all rules and authority. He often taunts his opponents with a condescending attitude, such as threatening the endless family member Sandman, "I can kill all the demons in hell without any effort." At the same time, Lucifer has extraordinary strategic ability and is good at using other people's weaknesses to achieve his goals, such as trading with the wizard Merlin to deal with the civil strife in hell. And she heard Constantine say that Lucifer is also a contradictory and complex person. He is tired of the eternal rule of hell and pursues free will. After giving up the throne, he ran a piano bar Lux in Los Angeles, observing the world as a bystander. He is cynical on the surface, but he is confused about the meaning of existence in his heart. And this devil of hell follows a unique code of honor: never lie, keep promises, and repay debts, but his indifference to life makes his behavior full of cold rationality. "I am Lucifer." Lucifer smiled after hearing what Siri said, and said to everyone, "Or, you can also call me Satan. Hello, my niece." Lucifer then turned his gaze to the stunned Elena and said to her, "I'm sorry, as an uncle, I scared you, Elena, and you, are you Bayonetta?" Then he turned his gaze to Teresa and the little Shiba Inu doll she was riding, with a smile on his face. An incredible creature, and a natural witch, he showed an admiring expression to Teresa. "If you were not the daughter of Peter Patrick, I would take you away as a witch from hell." Teresa snorted unhappily. "I won't go with you. My body and soul belong to my dad." "Really? But your soul is not simple. As a fallen angel, Lucifer has almost omnipotent power. He saw through Bayonetta's true nature. Teresa is half human, half angel, and has powerful magic." Lucifer immediately became interested in her dual bloodline. He liked this kind of existence that challenged the boundary between heaven and hell. "Half demon, half angel hybrids are more interesting than I thought," Lucifer said to Teresa, "but the cracks in your soul will devour you sooner or later. Heaven and hell are waiting for you to collapse so that they can divide the wreckage. I am more and more curious about what kind of creator Peter is. Who would actually give birth to an existence like you who challenges the boundary between heaven and hell?" Shaking his head, Lucifer walked directly into the abandoned factory under Teresa's shocked and puzzled eyes. Lucifer walked in under the moonlight. His black suit was spotless, and his silver hair flowed on his shoulders like molten mithril. At the same time, Sander Fang was being beaten back by Peter. Peter used the energy of the gods on one hand and the power of the ruby on the other, constantly transforming props to attack him. Although he was a fallen angel with powerful strength, he was still suffering from Peter's attack. The released holy light and the corrupt energy from hell were powerless against the man in front of him. He even suspected that the other party was a hell lord who had popped out of nowhere, or that Gabriel was in disguise. Otherwise, why would this new god of sleep have the power of faith, and the energy of the gods he emitted was more powerful and pure than his? "Stop!" He was whipped again, and he endured the pain and asked Peter in disbelief, "Who are you?" "Peter Patrick. Even the sleep demon doesn't have such power as you." "Which god are you?" "Suspected of being a god." Peter was stunned for a moment, shook his head and said, "God? No, I'm not a god. If you insist, I am the faith of Zoan." "Zoan?" "Yes, the power of faith of Zoan." Before he finished speaking, Peter whipped the other party out with a whip. The power of faith in Peter's body came from Zoan. Before that, the faith of Zoan was the Phoenix Girl. But since the Night of Souls, when Peter's statue drove away the corrupted monsters in the darkness, he has become the patron saint of Zoan, Piltover, and nearby Bilgewater after Janna the Phoenix. Now in Shurima, Peter's name has spread all over the coast of Shurima. The residents of Ashlavazuan are the most ardent believers. They rely on the calm sea to bring trade ships to the city's port. In order to thank Peter for his kindness and for driving away the monsters in the Night of Souls, they erected statues and shrines, and even now that Noxus has annexed the city, this expression of faith continues. Relying on this power of faith, Peter will have a more refined power of faith than Sander Fang. Specifically, Peter's divine power is stronger, and the silver whip with the power of faith makes him miserable. So much so that Sander Fang wondered if Peter used to be a farmer, and whipping him was like whipping those serfs working in the fields. And this whipping technique is extremely skillful. Another whip flew away, and Sander Fang became more and more angry. After hearing the voice from behind, Peter's silver whip froze half an inch away from Sander Fang's body. He turned around and saw the silver-haired man walking towards the two of them step by step. Seeing the other party's dress and temperament, Peter immediately guessed his identity: Lucifer. Why did this guy appear here? Peter frowned. At the same time, Sander Fang, the fallen angel's pupils shrank into needles in an instant. He saw the man who frightened him appeared here. Lucifer, who was stared at by the two, didn't even look at Sander Feng, but just bent down to pick up the dagger on the ground. Killing people with weapons I used before. Lucifer's voice seemed to frost the air. What a lack of imagination, Sander Feng. This dagger was a weapon that Lucifer had used in hell. Sander Feng, who appeared in the form of an old man with a head full of silver hair, retreated in fear, but soon his retreat was tripped by the chain of God energy released by Peter. Sander Feng, whose head was dripping with sweat, suddenly saw Lucifer's cane tapping the ground lightly. The gravity of the entire factory suddenly reversed, and Sander Feng was stuck to the ceiling like a moth nailed to a specimen board. A dull sound of bang rang in the air, and rust and broken glass cut thousands of bloody marks on his skin. You can't. Sander Feng's voice was squeezed and deformed. I am an angel. I am God. Lucifer finally looked up at him. The burning in those blue eyes was not anger, but something more terrifying, like the nothingness before the birth of the universe, or something more terrifying than that. You are not God's messenger. Lucifer used the dagger to cut Michael's chains. Get out of here quickly, or I don't mind killing you directly. You know, I don't need to spend any effort to kill you. Also, don't think about my niece in the future. As soon as the voice fell, Sander Feng was instantly knocked out by a powerful force. When Sander Feng fell to the ground, Lucifer had already picked up Michael. The archangel's broken wings hung outside his arms, and the golden blood soaked the lining of his suit. Peter looked at this willful demon king, and his expression became a little serious. This demon king was really powerful, and he actually suppressed Sander Feng in an instant. Let's go, Sander, Lucifer shouted to Peter and asked him to follow him. Seeing Peter coming out, Elaine and the others didn't know the situation and looked at Peter in confusion. Let's go. Peter touched his daughter's head and asked them to follow him. Several people walked in the moonlight. Lucifer's car stopped in front of a deserted church. He laid Michael flat on the back seat and lit a cigar. The sparks illuminated the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. Then he turned around and took out a handkerchief from his arms, asked Joan to come over, and wipe the sweat on her cheeks. Elaine, you learn two things tonight. First, don't leave your back to something that breathes. Second, Lucifer said, gently holding Joan in his arms. Joan of Arc heard his heartbeat, slow, heavy, like the magma surging in the deepest part of hell. Second, his voice was muffled by his silver hair. I will always be late. Lucifer hugged his niece and said with a complicated expression. Chapter 865. A new universe is created, the end of everything. Siri, Zatanna, and Teresa looked at Lucifer, who was holding Jean in his arms, and fell silent. What does he want to do? Teresa asked Zatanna in a low voice. I don't know, but he doesn't look like a bad guy. Zatanna had a good impression of this mysterious Lord of Hell. She felt that this guy was not as scary as the rumors said. Under the gaze of Zatanna and others, Lucifer turned around and aimed his eyes at Peter. New god of sleep Peter Patrick, I have heard of your name, especially in hell. You are famous, and not just anyone has the strength to defeat Mammon. After Lucifer gently patted Jean's hair, he slowly said to Peter, moreover, your name seems to be not limited to hell. I even heard your name from death. Siri, who was next to her, continued to ask Zatanna curiously, who is Death? Facing two curious babies, Zatanna had a headache. Finally, she introduced them to the two. The Sandman that Peter replaced is a member of the Death family. In our world, the incarnation of Death is more complicated. Death is a physical personification of the power of the universe. It is an abstract concept. If Death wants, it can appear in any physical form and can also travel through any dimension of life. Death is both the Lord of Death and the incarnation of life. Zatanna thought of the mysterious and compassionate Death. Speaking of which, she encountered the death of the Endless family in the accident she encountered in her last magic show. An ordinary person can see death twice in his life, once when they die, and the other time when they are just born. Listening to Zatanna's introduction, Teresa blinked, pushed up the frame of her glasses, and then hugged the little Shiba Inu doll that had turned back before. She hugged the little Shiba Inu tightly and whispered to Zatanna, is death powerful? Can she be more powerful than Daddy? Daddy just defeated the angel named Sandwine easily. In her heart, her daddy is the most powerful. Facing the question raised by Teresa, Zatanna thought about the information Peter had told her before, and said to Teresa, Death, like all members of the Endless family, has almost unlimited power and is almost omnipotent. The Endless family can only be killed in a way that they allow themselves, otherwise, Even if they are destroyed by other powerful forces, they will be reborn immediately and restore the previous appearance before being destroyed, and death is the most powerful of the endless family. Is that so? After hearing Zatanna's explanation, Teresa nodded indifferently. On the other hand, facing Lucifer's revelation of his identity, Peter did not feel too strange. After all, this guy is omniscient and omnipotent to a certain extent. Yes, I have experienced some things with Sister Death. She is a very gentle person, gentle, rejoice in the new life and grieve for the passing away. She is indeed a gentlewoman. Let's get back to the topic. Peter Patrick, I have always been curious about your children. How did you have these children? Each of them is a different soul. Lucifer asked a question that interested him the most. It's a long story. Maybe I have a different talent. You know, Michael has a unique creative power in the world, so he used this creative power to create Elaine, and my unique and different creativity gave birth to different children. Peter said nonsense to him casually. Of course, it was not all nonsense. Peter believed that he might have some unique creative power. Otherwise, why would the system choose him and send so many fathers to him? Creative power. Lucifer looked at him in surprise when he heard Peter say this. This is a different explanation. Then he turned his eyes to Michael in the car and said to everyone, unfortunately, Michael, who has the creative power, can't hold on. Hearing the other party say this, Joan of Arc immediately became nervous, holding Lucifer's hand tightly, and said to him with a nervous and uneasy tone, Uncle, please save my father. Of course I will. On the other side, looking at Michael who was dying and couldn't speak, Peter frowned. Michael's body was indeed seriously injured. Come with me. Lucifer opened a void without waiting for Peter to speak. Then, in the shocked eyes of Joan of Arc, several people stood in an endless void. Standing in the dark and boundless outer space, Joan of Arc asked Lucifer in surprise, Uncle, where's this? The void outside of creation. There is no time here. Lucifer laid the dying Michael flat on the sea of nothingness. The waves of the sea of stars rolled up around, rising and disappearing under his feet. Why do you have to choose such a shabby place? Michael coughed up golden blood, and flesh and blood gushed out of his wounds. He seemed to realize what the other party was going to do. Facing Michael, Lucifer drew out a morning star sword. The blade was forged from the ribs of the first generation of archangels, and it was humming like resonance at this moment. The best way to be reborn is to experience death. Just like I said before, rejoice in the new life and grieve for the passing. Then, in the astonished eyes of Peter and the others, Lucifer thrust the tip of his sword into Michael's heart. Boom! The void lit up with a white light like a supernova explosion. Archangel Michael's power of creation rushed out like a wild horse. His blood turned into stardust, and the energy bursting out of his body boomed outward. The entire void was swept by the torrent of the power of creation. Facing the powerful power of creation, Lucifer opened his arms and let the energy flow tear his suit apart. Peter watched Lucifer kill Michael, with an unbelievable look on his face. This devil of hell killed Michael? No, that's not right. Peter looked at the void and there seemed to be light, new life, new energy seemed to be born in it. The whole void seemed to have a hint of life. Could it be that a new universe was born? Did Lucifer use the power of creation in Michael to create a new universe? Peter had a serious expression on his face. Teresa, Sari and Zatanna, who were standing in the void, were also stunned. Could it be that they were witnessing the birth of a new miracle? After the birth of the new universe, Michael opened his eyes deep in the core of the star. His wings became translucent, and each feather shone. The pain left in the void still burned his nerves, but what was more painful was the discomfort from his weak body at this time. After the resurrected Michael adapted to the new universe, he left the core of the star. After Lucifer created the new universe, he used the portal to send Peter and others to the earth. Joan of Arc felt a flash in front of her eyes, and she saw herself standing in the monastery that had been repaired. We are back. Teresa had not yet recovered from the shock of Michael's death, but the next second, she was shocked to see Michael landing on the rooftop of the monastery. His new wings no longer emit holy light, but absorb the surrounding light, like two silhouettes in the night. After looking at Peter and the others, Michael said to Peter, "Thank you, Peter, thank you for coming to save me. You're welcome. We agreed that I will help you take care of Joan of Arc. I don't want Joan of Arc to get into trouble because she wants to find you." Peter looked at the resurrected archangel in surprise and said to him. Joan of Arc, who was next to him, thought Michael was dead. Now seeing that he was resurrected, her face immediately showed excitement. She rushed over and hugged Michael. Dad, I thought you would never come back. I'm sorry, Elaine, I didn't take good care of you, Michael said to Joan of Arc. Lucifer killed me just now. The power of creation in my body created a new universe, and I was reborn in this universe. Only by experiencing death can we have a complete cycle of experience, so that the universe can function normally. Now, my daughter, are you willing to go back to heaven with me? As long as you go back, you will never experience a life full of troubles again. In our life experience, we will always experience all kinds of pain. As long as we return to heaven, these pains will no longer exist. Joan of Arc was embarrassed when she heard Michael say that he would take her to heaven. She looked at Teresa, who was hesitant to speak, and then looked at Peter. After hesitating for a while, Joan of Arc finally rejected her father's invitation and chose not to go to heaven. No, Dad, I want to stay here. Mona is here, Aurora is here, and Mr. Patrick is here. Everyone is here. Even if life is full of setbacks, it is real, isn't it? Michael was stunned when he heard Joan's words. Then he laughed at himself. That's true. Although life is painful, it is extremely real. As Michael spoke, he spread his palm and a black sphere floated up. The surface was covered with golden veins like blood vessels, pulsating with the frequency of breathing. I want to give you a gift, my daughter. Michael's fingertips touched the sphere, reflecting scenes of memory fragments. Joan took the black sphere in confusion. It was heavier than it looked, as if it directly tied her soul. Why give it to me? Because you need it. It contains your grandmother's soul, my daughter. You value family affection. This is the only thing I can do for you. Michael looked at Peter. Peter, my daughter, I can only trouble you. I will. Peter nodded at him and said. At the same time, at the edge of the galaxy in the new universe, Lucifer was shaping this new universe. The newborn universe was not stable yet, and as its creator, he had to be responsible for it. We'll meet again, Peter Patrick. Chapter 866 Peter's Past, about love and separation. The next day, Peter drove Joan back to her hometown. Joan, who had been away from home for a long time, wanted to go back to see her parents. After what happened last night, the short-haired little girl seemed to have grown up a lot in an instant. Mr. Patrick, tell me, why did we separate? My father, Mona, and grandmother, one day, will you and Teresa also leave me? Joan sat in the co-pilot and asked Peter. Peter looked at the depressed little girl and said to her, because separation is for a better reunion, I look forward to seeing you again in the future. Do you see that station? Peter pointed to the entrance and exit of the station he drove past and said to her, there are two most touching places in the station, the entrance and the exit. One does not want you to leave, and the other waits for you to come back, the exit and the entrance. Listening to Peter's words, Joan leaned on the window and looked outside. Sir, can I know what your parents are like? Looking at the platform flashing by, Joan asked Peter with some melancholy. Me. Peter thought for a moment and said to her, my mother is a typical housewife who devotes all her love to the whole family. My father is a farmer who has always lived in Smallville. Peter mentioned the parents of his previous life. Will you be sad when you leave them? Hearing Joan's words, Peter was stunned. He recalled his memories of his parents and his previous life. Yes, I will be sad when I lose them, Peter said to the little lolly in a calm tone. At first I had a good job in the metropolis, and my life was busy and prosperous, fulfilling and rich. However, when my father told me that my mother was seriously ill and needed surgery, I had to put down my work and leave the big city to return home to take care of my sick mother. What happened next? Uncle, Joan blinked and asked him in a low voice. She was very interested in Uncle Peter's past. I always do what she asks, even though I hate to do it. The sour smell of her body, the straw-like hair under the hairbrush, the bedpan, wash basin and pills, all make me annoyed. I try my best to do all this, trying not to yell or say I'm annoyed with you, but she knows, she feels it, which is one of the many reasons why she lies on the sofa in the living room, crying silently. I try to make her comfortable and do what she needs. The cruel words spoken calmly by Peter stunned Jean. Uncle, do you hate your mother? No, Peter did not have any emotional fluctuations, but just calmly narrated the original body's psychology and emotions. As far as I can remember, my relationship with my mother has always been distant. Our relationship was awkward at first after I returned home because I was not used to this kind of care work. Peter continued, however, my mother tried every means to make life seem normal. She did a lot of homework, including holiday songs, Thanksgiving gatherings, childhood stories, teenage stories, and marriage stories. She filled me in one by one. In the trivial life of reading clubs, shopping, and walking, I kept in close contact with my mother, and gradually understood my mother's heart. I also gradually realized how much my mother had contributed to this family. As a full-time wife, my mother was responsible for housework and food, clothing, and daily expenses. It seemed ordinary, but it was integrated with my mother's deep love. After a pause, Peter continued, after my mother's condition worsened, I began to take charge of all the housework she had done. When I did everything myself, I truly realized my mother's greatness and learned to take care of my mother's self-esteem in the process of getting along with her. When her condition became so serious that she could not take care of herself, she had to sit in a wheelchair and accept help from others. Peter said this, and gently stroked the head of the girl who was depressed and couldn't get over Michael's departure. So when I have children, I will not miss any childhood memories they should have. Holiday songs, Thanksgiving gatherings, childhood stories, teenage stories, marriage stories, I will not miss them. Peter was not lying. Although this memory was of his previous life, the time he spent with his previous life before his mother died did give him a lot of feelings. These experiences forced him to start thinking about what being a parent should be like. "Uncle, where's your father?" she asked Peter in a low voice, feeling a little uncomfortable with Peter's life experience. Peter recalled and said to her, He is a bit complicated. My father first forced me to go home to take on important responsibilities, and then he evaded his own responsibilities. He always left home early and came back late under various excuses such as being busy at work. He lacked the proper care, understanding and support for his wife. I was disgusted with him, but Mother said to me one day, "Peter, this is difficult. If you are not on the siege, it is difficult for you to understand. This is life. Love and marriage are sometimes not the same thing." Peter reached out and stroked Joan's hair. "This is Uncle's life. We will all encounter separation, just like the separation between you and Mona, Grandma, and Michael. You can't accept it because it will make you feel painful, but our lives are always full of challenges, whether you are a child or an adult. So, Joan, don't be sad, don't be surprised, and don't be surprised. People's lives are intertwined with each other, and separation is the most natural thing." Listening to Peter's words, Joan seemed to understand a lot. "I didn't expect, Uncle, that your past would be like this." She looked at Peter gratefully. "Thank you, sir. I won't be sad for too long. I want to be someone who is optimistic about life like you, and I want to be someone who is full of love like you. Then I'm looking forward to it." Peter smiled at her. "Love? Am I a person full of love?" Peter fell into deep thought. 10 minutes later, Joan of Arc, who was sleeping on Peter's lap, heard a voice from outside. She rubbed her eyes, got up from Peter's lap and looked outside. "What's wrong, Uncle?" Joan of Arc asked Peter, who had stopped the car, in a daze. "There's a traffic jam outside. There should be a car accident ahead," Peter said to the little Lolita who had just woken up. Hearing the noisy sound coming from outside, Joan of Arc stood up and looked outside through the car window. To her surprise, she saw the soul of a confused man outside. The other party was wearing a baseball cap and was standing outside the crowd looking at his body. Aiden, who had turned into a soul, couldn't believe that he was dead. His memory went back to a few minutes ago. The morning fog filled the highway, and the visibility turned to 65 on the speed limit sign into a blurred gray shadow. Aiden drove the Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck and drove forward carefully. The aluminum can of apple cider on his dashboard rolled into the groove of the accelerator pedal with the bumps. Buzz, the horn of a truck came from the opposite side. A truck with a horn rushed over. When the truck's high beam pierced the fog wall, Aiden was trying to pick up the aluminum can of apple cider. Bang! The truck and the Chevrolet collided violently. The collision started with a left rear wheel hub, which scraped against the truck's chrome bumper. The steel anti-collision beam of the Chevrolet curled inward like tinfoil, and the wrench that flew out of the toolbox and the back box broke through the rear window glass and chiseled a fist-sized dent in the co-pilot's headrest. At the same time, the hissing sound of the antifreeze pipe bursting mixed with the smell of diesel poured into the cab. The moment the car hit, the seat belt also nailed Aiden to the seat. With a bang, the dashboard fragments exploded in a fan-shaped pattern. The metal needle of the tachometer pierced the outside of his thigh, and the glass shards were embedded in his shoulder in the shockwave of the airbag explosion. Squeak! Enduring the pain, he turned the steering wheel violently, and the tire plowed rubber scorch marks on the road. When the rear of the car hit the shoulder guardrail, the bolts of the spare tire rack flew through the gas station billboard. The letter S of the Shell logo went out, and the blue sparks of the neon tube burst like a waterfall. Aiden was thrown to the left door, and the muffled sound of the clavicle colliding with a B-pillar was heard. The fragments of the rearview mirror ricocheted in the car, one of which cut off the knob of the car radio, and Taylor Swafford's singing stopped abruptly. The flying metal fragments hit his heart. With a bang, Aiden was knocked unconscious in an instant. I'm dead. He looked at his hands in disbelief. No, I still need to call my wife. We just got married. I promised that I would always be with her. No, I can't break my promise. Aiden's soul made a desperate sound and immediately ran back. Uncle, I saw it. I saw the soul of that person. Joan of Arc pointed out the car window and said to Peter. Peter looked over and didn't see any soul. Could it be that Joan of Arc's special ability allowed her to see ghosts? Peter looked at Joan of Arc in confusion. He knew the power of Joan of Arc in the future. If the development was based on the original world line, Joan of Arc and Mona would become the patron saints of the universe created by Lucifer. Peter has determined that the second person under the most powerful god is Joan of Arc. Maybe I can resurrect him, not knowing that Peter was thinking about becoming the second person after God. Joan of Arc closed her eyes, held her breath, and tried to activate her ability. She felt that she could do it. However, just after she closed her eyes, a punk girl with dark circles under her eyes suddenly appeared and knocked on the car window. Hi, Peter. Chapter 867. Joan of Arc wants to run away from home. The punk girl's black hair was blown by the wind. She stood outside the car window and smiled at Peter and Joan. Death. Peter was stunned when he saw the second sister of the Endless family appearing outside. What wind blew this family member representing Death here? Speaking of which, it has been a long time since I last saw this member of the Death family, right? Joan saw Death standing outside, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. Although she didn't know that the person in front of her with fluffy hair and a gothic girl's outfit was Death, she was quickly attracted by the Eye of Horus jewelry on her chest. The Eye of Horus was full of mystery and had a familiar aura that made her unable to look away for a while. When Peter saw the second sister of Death appear, he was stunned for a moment and rolled down the car window. Long time no see, Death. Long time no see, Peter. You haven't changed much in such a long time. You still like to accompany children as before, Death said as he opened the car door and sat in the back seat. She looked at Jean, who was sitting in the passenger seat, with surprise, and asked Peter, "Is this Michael's daughter?" "Yes, her name is Elena Orlock, Michael's daughter." The second sister nodded. "I saw her when Michael died, and I didn't expect that she was actually Michael's daughter." She said that she witnessed everything when Lucifer killed Michael and created a new universe in the void. In other words, when Lucifer killed Michael, you saw the whole scene, Peter asked her in surprise. In other words, when he was in the void, he didn't even realize that there was always a guy behind him watching everything. When did the second sister who controls Death become so sinister? Yes, after all, as long as there is Death, I will appear, no matter where, Death said, while casting his eyes on Jean, who was looking at her curiously. Did you want to save that person just now? Death reached out and gently stroked Jean's hair, and whispered to her in his unique hoarse voice. Yes, I saw the soul of that man, and I felt sorry for him. Joan of Arc said the reason for her actions with some uneasiness. I think, maybe he needs help. Glancing at Peter, she added carefully. Although I fully understand, Death is not something that can be easily helped. The second sister of Death smiled at the other party. Death is not only the end of life, it is also regarded as an adventure. Each of us will experience it, so, sometimes you can't completely stop it. Adventure? Is Death an adventure? Joan of Arc thought for a while, and asked the second sister of Death, then why are people sad when they die? Seeing that the traffic ahead was temporarily blocked due to traffic jam, Peter turned around and said to Joan of Arc, this is a common situation, Joan of Arc. When people die, they are generally a little sad, or shocked, angry, or worse, because, Peter glanced at the second sister sitting in the back seat of the car, and continued, that's because, maybe people are not ready to accept the gift of Death, but in the end they still get her. The journey to the sunless land is long and arduous, and Death will always accompany the dead. The second sister of Death was a little stunned when she heard what Peter said. Then she smiled and said to Peter, you are right, Peter. Many people are not ready to face Death, but in the end, each of us is naked and alone. The second sister of death gently held Joan of Arc's slightly cold hand and said to her, "So, sometimes death is not a bad thing. It is an adventure that everyone will experience, an adventure that belongs to him alone, and we cannot interfere." Just as she finished her words, Joan of Arc saw a second sister of death appear outside the car window. It seemed to be the existence of the Death's clone, leading the man who had died in the car accident, slowly walking into the void, until the two were finally surrounded by a strong light and disappeared. Watching the second sister of death's clone leading the dead away, Joan of Arc was stunned. "Okay, don't be sad or melancholy, Elaine. Death is not the opposite of life, but a part of life, so there is no need to feel pain about it." After comforting Joan of Arc for a few words, the second sister was ready to leave. When she left, she smiled at Peter and said, "Goodbye, Peter, we will see each other soon." Seeing the second sister of death disappear like this, Peter was a little speechless. "Why do you sound like you are cursing me in your last sentence?" After the second sister of death left, the road that was blocked by traffic was cleared. Peter started the car and drove Joan of Arc, who looked thoughtful, to her home. Half an hour later, the car stopped outside Joan of Arc's home. Joan of Arc's parents, who had been waiting here for a long time, saw Peter and came over immediately. Now Lin Fang and his army of angels have been killed by Peter and Lucifer. After the danger was eliminated, Joan of Arc's adoptive parents rushed back to their original residence. Thank you, Mr. Patrick." Joan of Arc's adoptive father, Mr. Warlock, excitedly held Peter's hand and thanked him. "You're welcome. Elena is a very well-behaved child. I like her very much." Peter looked at Joan of Arc, who had been lowering her head, and gently held her hand. Joan of Arc felt warm in Peter's big hand. She suddenly felt reluctant to let go, because she knew that once she let go, she would be separated from Mr. Patrick temporarily. Not only could she not see Mr. Patrick, she could not see Teresa for a short time. Joan of Arc was suddenly surrounded by a sense of loss. Although she was reluctant, she could only watch Peter hug her and leave in the car. After Peter left, her mother took Joan of Arc's hand and walked into the room. "Great, it's finally over, and we can finally return to our normal lives." Listening to her mother's words, Joan of Arc said in her heart with some discomfort, "No, after everything I've experienced, I can never go back." Joan of Arc entered a room and looked at the dolls, fairy tale books and magic-themed toys in the room. Her room was decorated very warmly, with curtains or wallpaper with patterns such as flowers and stars. There was also a hand-painted photo of herself and her good friend Mona on the wall. Looking at the photo on the wall, Joan of Arc tilted her head. She felt that she should include Teresa in it. Bang! Joan of Arc sat down on the bed, and suddenly she had an impulse in her heart. And this impulse became stronger and stronger. That was to run away from home. She could never go back to the past. Her adoptive parents had always been indifferent to her. The people she cared about, Mona and her grandmother, had already left this world. There was nothing left for her to miss. Thinking of this, Joan of Arc immediately got up from the bed. It seemed that she had to prepare in advance for a plan to run away from home. It would be best to set the destination of her runaway to Mr. Patrick's farm. At this time, Peter didn't know that Joan of Arc was preparing to run away from home, and she had set the destination of her runaway to the farm. As soon as he sent Joan of Arc back, Peter found that there was something wrong with the atmosphere in the courtyard. The farm was quiet, without any sound. Peter walked into the living room in confusion and found that only Loki was lying on the sofa, holding a novel called My Encounter with Thor in his hand, and seemed to be reading it with great interest. Peter saw Loki reading Thor's fan fiction, and his eyebrows moved slightly. "Loki." Hearing Peter's voice, Loki raised his head in surprise. "Dad, where did you get this fan fiction? And it's about Thor." "I don't know." Loki stood up and said to him, "I picked it up in the Marvel world. When you were fighting against some fallen angels, I took some time to go to the Marvel world and picked up this fanfiction." Hearing Loki say this, Peter walked over curiously and continued to ask Loki, "Is there the author's name on it?" "Well, let me see." Loki opened the title page and saw a signature on it. "Squirrel Girl." Loki read the signature name on it. Squirrel Girl. Hearing this name, Peter was stunned. He remembered that there was indeed a superhero named Squirrel Girl in the Marvel world. Could it be the girl who was hailed as the strongest superhero in Marvel? Squirrel Girl has the reaction, speed, retractable joints, front teeth, small claws and crooked toes of a squirrel, and can easily communicate with all squirrels. However, These are not the invincibility of Squirrel Girl. After all, these superpowers are considered to be very common standard strengths in Marvel, and the ability to communicate with squirrels is not worth mentioning in the eyes of other bigwigs. The reason why many people think that Squirrel Girl is the strongest existence in Marvel is that if you look at Squirrel Girl's record, you will find that all the enemies defeated by Squirrel Girl are not simple. Among the characters that have fought with Squirrel Girl, they are all top bosses in Marvel, or super powerful gods. For example, Thanos, Deadpool, Doctor Doom, Murdock and Mandarin. Among them, Thanos needs no introduction, and Deadpool was defeated by Squirrel Girl twice. Doctor Doom is a supervillain who has obtained the power of the Transcendent. Because she has defeated these supervillains, many people also joke that Squirrel Girl's real ability is to defeat the boss for no reason, so she was given a title Invincible Squirrel Girl. Chapter 868 Bayonetta, is Loki a bad guy? Is this a fanfiction about Thor written by Squirrel Girl? Peter took the book from Loki with some doubts and flipped through a few pages. The book describes the adventures of Thor, and he has a lot of scenes in the Thanos chapter. But it's a little strange that in this novel, Thor is actually a cat. And his image in this novel is also a cat. He was described as a cat in the story of a superhero. Peter suddenly felt bad. If this was really written by Squirrel Girl, would she turn herself into a cat one day? This is not impossible. After all, Gwen is here. Who can guarantee that Squirrel Girl will not come and suddenly turn herself into a cat? Is this really not written by you, Loki? Peter suspected that this was Loki's doing. He asked Loki in doubt, didn't you write this under the name of Squirrel Girl? Considering that Loki once published a best-selling book about himself in the Hogwarts world, Peter seriously suspected that this kid wrote a fanfiction book about Thor himself. No, of course I didn't write this, because I have no interest in that fat guy Thor, Loki said confidently. Peter, who felt that what the other party said made sense, fell silent. Seeing that Peter didn't speak, Loki coughed slightly and said to Peter, Dad, you now have a new fan in the other world. The author of Squirrel Girl must also be your fan. Your dad is not interested in being an idol. Also, if one day I become a cat, don't be surprised. Peter handed the book to Loki and asked him, where are the others? Where are Azu and Teresa? Isn't it the harvest festival in the town today? You forgot, Dad. Hearing Peter say this, Peter immediately remembered. Today is the annual harvest festival in the town of Smallville. Peter had been busy with Michael's kidnapping before, so he forgot about it. Loki took the book and said to Peter, Persephone has taken everyone to the market to sell agricultural products, is that so? Peter nodded and prepared to drive to the market. Dad, Loki called Peter and asked him hesitantly, did you defeat the fallen angel? Although he seemed cynical on the surface, Loki was very concerned about everything his father had experienced, especially his safety. Although he often boasted that he was the heir of Padrick's farm and the Prince of Asgard, and that he might usurp the throne at any time, in his heart, the person Loki cared about the most was Peter. It was just that his tsundere attribute was the most serious among the several father-worried people. Yes, to be exact, it was Lucifer who defeated him. Peter threw the car keys to him. Drive to the market in the town center, and I'll tell you on the way. Lucifer, hearing Peter's words, Loki was stunned. Now he was more interested. Catching the flying keys, Loki adjusted his horn crown. Of course, Dad, let me show you my driving skills. A few minutes later, Peter sat in the passenger seat of the car and told Loki about his battle with Sander Fenn, and about Lucifer who suddenly joined in and killed Michael and opened up a new universe. Loki listened to Peter's story, admired his father, and couldn't help but start thinking about writing a book. It would be a waste if such a legendary story was not written into a book. He planned to write his father's experience into a book and sell it as a bestseller. He would definitely make a lot of money like last time. At this time, Loki couldn't suppress his desire to create. Peter was telling Loki, who was listening attentively, when his cell phone rang. At the same time, Clark and Azu were selling fresh corn with their sister Teresa in the market. The market in the center of the town was bustling with people coming and going. Siri and Zatanna just came to the market and went to stroll around curiously. Why didn't Loki come? Teresa asked Clark with some confusion. Although Joan of Arc went back to visit her parents, which made her feel a little uncomfortable, the lively harvest festival soon attracted her attention. Because he likes to play pranks, in order to prevent him from making trouble, we collectively decided that he would stay on the farm and wait for the Godfather to come back, Clark explained to Teresa. So what pranks did he do? Teresa was somewhat interested in the pranks that Loki had done. Loki once ran for the US presidency. In the Marvel world, he disguised himself as an ordinary person and went to the United States to run for the presidency against two presidential candidates. He was strongly welcomed by the American people and his votes once surpassed other candidates. Clark was a little speechless and talked about the pranks that Loki had done. In the end, the reporter of the Daily Bugle revealed the truth about Loki's presidential campaign and prevented Loki from being elected, but Loki didn't really care about this election. He just wanted to play a prank. Anything else, Teresa thought Loki was very interesting. Azu next to him added, another time, Thor was turned into a frog by Loki. The frog Thor trapped in the sewer had to cooperate with another frog-turned person to resist the rats who wanted to eat them. Huh? Hearing that Loki turned Thor into a frog, Teresa was stunned. She had heard about Thor from Balm. The other party seemed to be a fat game nerd who borrowed a lot of money from his father to buy a game console, but suddenly ran away one day. Her brother, Loki, could actually turn Thor into a frog. Then pushing the frame of her glasses, Teresa asked worriedly, will Loki turn me into a frog? That's not necessarily true, Azu deliberately put on a stern face, because that guy is a prankster. Do you know what Loki in the parallel world has done? Azu wanted to scare Teresa with some evil taste. He said to Teresa with a serious expression, Thor once faced Loki and still wanted to influence his brother with family affection. As a result, when Loki faced the tragic situation of New York pointed out by Thor on the Stark building, he showed an expression of sudden enlightenment. Finally, after Thor thought he had influenced Loki, he directly stabbed Thor with a knife. Loki wants the inheritance of the farm, and he will kill anyone. Hearing what Azu said, Teresa immediately took it to heart. She would learn some of this kind of transformation magic in the future. Otherwise, if she turned into a frog, her father would definitely not recognize her. Just when Teresa was worried about whether Loki would turn her into a frog, Clark's cell phone rang. He took out his cell phone and answered the call directly. Mom, it's Clark. What's wrong? The voice of his mother Martha came from the other end of the phone. Clark, come back soon. Your father is in trouble. Hearing that his father was in trouble, Clark was struck by lightning. Half an hour ago, an employee of the Luthor Group, Bells, was driving a car on the road. Bell's knuckles holding the steering wheel were pale blue, and the lights on the dashboard reflected his nervous expression. The sealed lead box on the passenger seat kept humming, and the halo of light seeping out of the box seam kept shaking on the roof with the bumps. In the rearview mirror, the afterimage of the Luthor Group factory building was reflected rapidly. Mr. Leno, I got the flower that was cultivated in Lex's safe. The crisp sound of ice cubes hitting the glass came from the earphones, and Leno Luthor replied to him, you'd better not mess it up, send it over as soon as possible, I need to see the flower immediately. Bales was about to answer when a truck suddenly emerged from the thick fog. Seeing the sudden appearance of the truck, Bales slammed on the brakes. Squeak. The tires left a scorch mark of dozens of meters on the road. The lead box hit the windshield under the action of inertia, and a translucent red petal fell on his thigh. The moment the skin touched, fine red rashes climbed along the blood vessels like living things. Damn it, he pulled off his tie and wiped it randomly, but found that the red rashes were wriggling under the skin. Then, under his frantic operation, a series of sparks suddenly burst out from the dashboard, and the car radio automatically jumped to the AM frequency band. The hoarse radio songs mixed with the hissing of electricity exploded in the car. Damn it! Damn it! Although Bales tried desperately to control the car, it still crashed forward out of control. On the other side, Jonathan was driving the car back to the farm. When the driveway entered the town's highway, Jonathan Kent was awakened by the harsh sound of metal tearing. He saw a car crashing into the side of the road. Oh, no, this is not good. Jonathan immediately pressed the off button on the phone that was talking to Martha, and then quickly pressed the double flash warning light with his right hand. Then, in his shocked sight, the Lexus suddenly swung sideways 90 degrees, and the rear of the car hit the isolation pier fiercely. The steel monster weighing several tons completed 2 rolls in the air, and the roof of the car rubbed against the asphalt road and sparks burst out. Boom! The burning tires rolled over the road, dragging black marks in the thick smoke. Jonathan got out of the car, quickly grabbed the fire extinguisher and rushed to the car. He smelled a kind of sweet and dizzy floral scent, like a mandala at noon in midsummer. The face of the man in the driver's seat was covered with blood from the airbag. Hold on, Jonathan pulled open the deformed car door and found that the man was holding a lead box in his right hand. A hot air suddenly gushed out from the cracks in the box, and red dust got into his sleeves like a living thing. But Jonathan couldn't care less at the moment, as gasoline was leaking from the trunk. He had to rescue the man quickly. Chapter 869 Jonathan Kent's Jealousy. Luthor Manor. Lex Luthor quickly received the news of the theft of the test product from his subordinates. "You said someone stole the test flower from my test product botanical garden?" Lex asked Dr. Hamilton, who was in charge of plant cultivation, in surprise. "Yes, a test product was stolen by your employee." Dr. Hamilton frowned and said to him, "He probably left Smallville now. Sorry, it's my fault. This guy came in under the name of decoration. I didn't notice it, and then he took the things away directly. When I reacted, it was too late." "What kind of test product?" Lex put down the wine glass he was holding and asked him. "Nicodemus, this flower has been extinct for more than 100 years. I just revived this creature recently. I didn't expect someone to set his sights on it," Dr. Hamilton explained to Lex, who was obviously not very familiar with the Nicodemus plant. "I irradiated the dormant seeds with meteorite fragments to make this plant regain its vitality." Listening to the other party's explanation, Lex nodded. "What's his name?" "I mean, the guy who stole Nicodemus." Lex raised his glass again and asked the doctor. "James Bales." Lex nodded, with a thoughtful expression on his face. "I know." He was about to say something, but Dr. Hamilton's phone suddenly rang. After picking up the phone and talking to the other party for a few words, Dr. Hamilton hung up the phone. He said to Lex, "I just received a notice, sir. James Bales had a car accident. His car overturned on the side of the road. Someone rescued him. The residents of Smallville Town rescued him. Don't tell me it was Peter, or Clark and Azu, these people from the Padrick family who saved him." "No," Dr. Hamilton said to him, "it was Clark's father Jonathan Kent who saved him." Jonathan Kent. Hearing this name, Lex was stunned for a moment. Jonathan Farm. Peter and Loki, as well as Clark, have rushed here after receiving Martha's call. Seeing Peter coming, Martha, who was waiting at the door with a somewhat anxious look, welcomed Peter and his group in. "What happened?" Martha, Peter, Rocky, and Clark walked to the porch and asked Martha, who was very uneasy with her hands folded on her chest. Martha showed a confused expression on her face. "I don't know what happened to Jonathan. He looks a little weird." Jonathan in the room seemed to hear Peter's voice and asked him loudly, "Peter, there's a football game on TV. Do you want to watch it with me?" Jonathan pushed open the door with a bottle of wine and walked out carelessly. Martha looked at her husband's careless behavior and asked him in surprise, "Didn't you say you would drive the agricultural products to the market this morning? This kind of chores can be done anytime." With a bang, he slammed the bottle against the fence. The beer bottle cap fell off with a bang. Seeing her husband's rude behavior, Martha was stunned. Jonathan didn't seem to notice Peter's surprised look, and he was wiping the bottle with a window cloth. "I have the right to take a break. Martha, can you help me take over?" Clark frowned and looked at his father. He had heard Martha say that his father had just saved a person who had a car accident on the way back. Seeing his father's rude behavior, Clark asked Jonathan, "Dad, did your previous heroic behavior make you lose your mind?" Clark, seeing Clark's retort to his father, Peter glared at him. Clark wanted to say something, but the roar of a car sounded outside. Everyone looked over and found that it was Lex Luthor who drove to the Kent farm. Lex, who was dressed in a suit, didn't expect Peter to be here. After a moment of hesitation, he greeted Peter and then cast his eyes on Jonathan. "Mr. Jonathan, I heard that you rescued my employees from the car. I came to see if you are okay," Lex said as he stretched out his hand to Jonathan. But Jonathan didn't shake his hand. Instead, he snorted coldly, "No, you came to see if I'm going to sue you, Lex." "What?" Jonathan took a sip of wine and said to the stunned Lex, "And that will solve our financial difficulties, right?" Seeing her husband going too far, Martha immediately stopped him. "Enough, Jonathan, not enough." Martha, taking a deep breath, he turned his gaze to Lex and continued, "I don't like you, Lex Luthor, nor do I like Leon Luthor. I don't like you being friends with my son. Do you know that? If all the people in your Luthor family died, I wouldn't shed a tear." Seeing his father's attack on Lex getting more and more fierce, Clark finally couldn't help it and stepped forward to put his hand on his father's arm. "Enough, Dad." Seeing Clark stopping him, Jonathan shook off Clark's hand holding his arm. "I'm going back to bed." After glaring at Lex, Jonathan turned around and walked towards the room with the wine in his hand. Seeing her husband's rude behavior, Martha apologized to Lex helplessly. "Sorry, Lex, I don't know what's wrong with Jonathan." Peter looked at Jonathan's strange behavior and frowned slightly. He always felt that Jonathan just now didn't look like his usual self. Could it be that the other party was affected by something? Peter cast his eyes on Jonathan, who was walking upstairs, and activated his perspective eyes to look at the other party's body. As expected, he found that Jonathan's blood was a little unusual. It seemed that there was something extra in his blood. What could it be? Peter stroked his beard and fell into deep thought. Afternoon. When only Jonathan and Martha were left in Kent Farm, Jonathan went downstairs to get some water. As soon as he picked up the cup, he heard the phone message ring. "This is the Kent family, please leave a message." "Hey, Jonathan, this is Jim Anderson from the bank. Sorry, I have to tell you the truth. Regarding your previous loan, I'm afraid we have to reject your loan application." Hearing that the other party said that his loan application was going to be rejected, Jonathan immediately rushed over and picked up the phone. "Hey, Jim, listen to me, you can't do this. I have contributed to this community again and again, but everyone only exploits me. I'm going to the bank now, and you must reject my loan in person. This way I can see if you have the guts, or if you will only be hidden in a drawer by your wife." With a bang, Jonathan slammed the phone down heavily. His face was distorted by the anger, and he was gasping for air. Emotionally excited, he immediately took out the shotgun that drove animals from the farm, walked to the garage, turned the car key, and rushed to the street with a bang. The rampaging car was speeding on the road, and the passers-by around were scared and dodged. "How do you drive like a psychopath?" Jonathan, who was completely unaware of the abuse, stepped on the accelerator and sped away. At this time, at the Kent farm, Martha had just come downstairs when she saw her husband throw the phone and drive away with a shotgun. Martha, who realized that her husband might get into trouble, immediately panicked. She called Peter and Clark and told them that Jonathan hurried out with a shotgun. Peter, Clark, Rocky, and Teresa were selling farm products at the Harvest Festival. After receiving the call, they immediately rushed to the address provided by Martha. Near the bank, Jonathan just stopped the car and walked out with a shotgun in his hand. Whoosh, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Jonathan. Peter used super speed to rush to the scene and stopped him before the other party could act. "Jonathan, what are you doing?" Peter stopped in front of him, looking at Jonathan with a ferocious expression holding a shotgun. "Peter, get out of the way. They are going too far. I will fight back." "Fight back what?" Peter stretched out his hand to block his way. "You are too impulsive, Jonathan. Stop, I'm fine. Don't block the way, Peter." Click. Jonathan loaded the bullets in the shotgun and stared at Peter. "Otherwise I will be rude to you, Peter." Peter shook his head. "You know this thing can't hurt me." Jonathan gritted his teeth and said to Peter sharply, "Yes, I know. You are different. You are an alien like Clark. You are immortal. We have known each other for so long, and you still look the same. You are better than me. You let Clark regard you as a father, and I have become an insignificant role." Martha, Clark, Loki, and Teresa also rushed over at this time. Hearing her husband's excessive words, Martha immediately stopped him. "Jonathan, what are you talking about? Peter is never an outsider." Peter reached out and stopped Martha from trying to stop her husband from speaking. "It's okay, Martha, let him continue." "Very good, I'll tell you today that I am Clark's father, not you. Clark has always regarded you as his father since he was a child. He even thinks you are his real father. You do everything yourself and act like a parent at all times. I am Clark's father. I am the father who raised him, not you. Now Clark has become your follower. Does he take me, his father, seriously?" Clark was stunned when he heard Jonathan's resentment towards Peter. Did his father care so much about this matter? But he didn't ignore his father. He just liked to follow his godfather. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 870. You actually took the bullet for him? Not for your dad. On the other side, Loki and Teresa were also shocked when they saw this scene. They didn't expect that their father and Uncle Kent also had such a dispute. It turned out that Uncle Jonathan cared so much about Clark treating Peter as his father. "That's not what you really think, Jonathan." Peter frowned and said to him, "The Jonathan I know is upright, tenacious, and values family and community." He taught Clark that the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility, and emphasized that the use of superpowers must be tied to moral choices. He opposed Clark using his abilities for personal gain and encouraged him to help others anonymously. He would be injured many times to protect Clark's secrets, Peter said to him slowly, "and what I have done is to move towards one goal, that is, to make an alien who is almost godly choose to be the guardian of mankind. I did not specifically tell Clark that I am his father, nor did I tell him who he should listen to, let alone want to snatch Clark away. As an orphan of Krypton, Clark is eager to integrate into the human group, but he feels lonely because of his alien identity. He must hide his abilities to maintain a normal life. This repression has become the source of sensitivity and alienation in his character. My alien identity can make Clark find a sense of identity, so he is willing to get close to me. This is the reason." Peter looked into Jonathan's eyes and said with an unchanged expression, "Clark has his own ideas. None of us can help him make a decision, and no one can influence his decision." Jonathan pointed the gun at Peter. "You didn't tell Clark, but you did it. Get out of the way, Peter, or I'll shoot you." Clark, who was standing aside, was slightly touched by Peter's words. Yes, he had been following the Godfather since he was a child. Isn't it because the Godfather not only recognized his identity, but also saw the sensitivity and alienation in his heart? He looked at Peter with a complicated expression. Jonathan, who had been stopped by Peter, was on the verge of an explosion. After hearing Peter's words, the violent emotions raging in his heart could no longer be controlled. Taking a deep breath, he pointed the gun at Peter and pulled the trigger. Bang! No! Seeing Jonathan pulling the trigger at his father, Clark, who was anxious in his heart, immediately activated his super speed. Whoosh! Clark moved in front of Peter and blocked the bullet for Peter. Bang! The bullet from the shotgun hit Clark's body, leaving a cloud of dust. Everyone at the scene didn't expect Clark to block the bullet for Peter, and they were all stunned. Martha looked at her husband, then at her son who blocked the bullet, and her expression was stunned for a moment. Jonathan, who shot at Peter, didn't expect that he would actually shoot the bullet. The moment the bullet was fired, Jonathan regretted it. What shocked him even more was that his son would actually block the bullet for Peter. "Who is your father?" Jonathan, holding a shotgun, had countless emotions on his face in an instant. Emotions such as regret, guilt, and jealousy intertwined, making him a little at a loss for a moment. I'm sorry." After saying this, Jonathan felt his eyes go black, his body went limp and he passed out. Seeing his father fainted, Clark immediately rushed over and hugged him. "Dad," Peter frowned at the unconscious Jonathan and said to everyone, "Let's send him to the hospital first." In the hospital corridor, Peter looked at the unconscious Jonathan in the ward and asked the doctor, "What disease does Jonathan have?" Martha, Clark, Teresa, and Loki in the corridor also came over to listen to the doctor's description of Jonathan's condition. His symptoms show severe anaphylactic shock, but no known pathogen antibodies can be found. Hearing the doctor's words, Martha asked the doctor worriedly, "What's going on?" The black doctor looked at Jonathan in the ward and said to Martha, "To be honest, if you came here yesterday, I would say I have never seen such a case, but this morning there was a man who was hospitalized in a car accident. His name is James Bells." The doctor said something that stunned several people, and this man named James Bells has the same symptoms as Jonathan. Hearing the doctor say that the two had the same symptoms, Martha and Clark looked at each other. "That's the man Dad saved this morning," Clark asked anxiously. "How is James Bells?" "Not very well, he fell into a coma an hour ago." Hearing the doctor's words, Martha's sadness immediately surged into her heart. Seeing that Martha was also in great pain, Peter gently reached out his hand to embrace Martha, and whispered to comfort her, "Don't worry, Jonathan must be fine." Teresa leaned on the window, and saw Jonathan in a coma, and felt a little uncomfortable. "Dad, I want to go to the scene to see. Maybe we can find something at the scene of the car accident." Teresa said that she wanted to go to the scene to see. "Of course, let Loki go with you." Peter looked at the gradually darkening night outside and said to Teresa, "Okay, leave it to me, Dad." Loki nodded, took Teresa out of the hospital corridor and walked outside. Peter stayed in the hospital because he had to take care of Martha. Half an hour later, Martha sat on a chair in the public lounge area to rest, feeling a little tired, while Peter stood in the corridor outside Jonathan's ward. "Godfather," Clark suddenly stood behind him at some point. "What's wrong, Clark?" Clark said hesitantly. "I want to apologize to you, Godfather. Dad didn't mean to shoot you. He was like a different person." "That's not the real him." Peter listened to Clark's words and turned to look at him. Although Peter knew that this might really be Jonathan's truest thoughts, he naturally wouldn't say it out loud. "Yes, I know, Clark, I know that's not what the real Jonathan wanted to say. In fact, my father and I had a lot of disagreements before." Clark looked at his father in the ward, exhaled deeply, and said to Peter, "I remember we had a quarrel because of the football game before. I always thought that my father didn't want my identity to be exposed, but in fact, he was afraid that I would be hurt. In his heart, I was actually a child who was easily hurt." Clark thought of a quarrel with his father before. He was playing football secretly, but was discovered by his father. "Do you know what time it is now?" Jonathan was a little angry when he found out that Clark was practicing secretly. "And what is this?" He kicked at the twisted metal dumbbells on the sidelines, the plates curled up like crumpled tinfoil. Clark hid the football behind him. "We're playing Central City High tomorrow," the coach said. "So you broke the fence on the farm? And sent parts of a harvester flying across 2 blocks in the cornfield?" His father took a step forward, his expression unusually serious. "Last week it was the track team, last month it was the basketball team, and now it's the football team. Clark, do you think you can get away with the excuse of a tornado took the equipment away every time?" Clark felt a stone stuck in his throat. He looked down at the football he had just pinched with his fingerprints. "I just wanted to be like a normal person. Normal people don't make 40-yard dash timers explode." Jonathan suddenly grabbed his protective gear, breathing heavily. "Every time you lose control of your power, someone might discover your secret. Those government agents, researchers from LexCorp. So I have to hide in the barn forever." Clark shook off his father's hand, and the buckle of his shoulder guard broke and flew off. "Look at this." He lifted up his jersey, and the bruise on his waist was fading at a speed visible to the naked eye. "Ordinary people's wounds need 2 weeks to heal, but I only need 2 minutes. How can I be ordinary like this?" Clark's voice suddenly became louder, scaring away the night owls on the treetops. Jonathan was stunned for a moment, and then his calloused palm pressed on his son's shoulder. "The people you saved, the people you helped, the gratitude to you, are not better than the cheers of the cheerleaders." Clark listened to his father's words and fell into silence. He wanted to say that Lana smiled at him today, and how the boiling waves of the whole stadium filled the void in his chest when he crossed the touchdown line, but his father's eyes made him say nothing. "Last practice, Dad." Clark bent down to pick up the football. "Just let me finish tomorrow's game." Before he finished speaking, Jonathan suddenly picked up the chain on the sidelines. Clark subconsciously raised his hand to block, but froze at the moment of metal collision. Green light seeped out from the gaps in the chain, and kryptonite powder licked his blood vessels like a venomous snake's tongue. "Do you understand now?" Jonathan's voice came and went in the tinnitus. "Any coach on the field may have brought such souvenirs, those lucky stones picked up from the meteor shower site." Clark knelt on the ground, watching the cold sweat drip onto the grass. "Dad actually cares about me a lot. He stopped me from participating in the competition because he was afraid that I would get hurt." Clark turned his eyes away from the glass of the ward and said to Peter, "I know he loves me, so I never feel that he is an unimportant character in my life. And Godfather, I know you love me too. You are both the most important people in my life. Dad taught me how to be a person, and Godfather, you taught me how to be a hero." Listening to Clark's words, Peter reached out and patted his shoulder. "We don't need to talk about this, Clark. Do you think I'm the kind of person who cares about who loves whom more? Just like you and Azu, you are all my wings, my sons, and you are equally important in my heart." At the same time, at the scene of the highway accident, before Loki and Teresa arrived at the scene, someone had already arrived to investigate. Chloe and Lana were searching for something at the scene with flashlights. Chapter 871 Loki, the old man will tie you down for life in the name of love. "Why are we here?" Lana asked Chloe while shining a flashlight on the car debris left after the car accident. Mr. Kent and Bells, who were in the car accident, had the same situation. "This is where Mr. Kent saved Bells. I think there must be some clues here." Chloe had already learned from Clark what happened to Jonathan Kent. She thought that maybe she could find something from the car accident scene. Lana felt that the night was a little cold. She wrapped her clothes tightly, exhaled and asked her bestie, "Then what are we looking for?" "Anything is fine," Chloe bent down to check the car accident scene while shining a flashlight. The debris started from a long way away and ended at the ditch. This is a serious car accident that cut in. After Chloe finished speaking, she took out the camera hanging around her neck and took pictures of the scene. Seeing that Chloe was completely obsessed with taking pictures, Lana shook her head and decided to go to the side to see if she could find anything. With a flashlight, Lana pushed aside the bushes and walked forward. Exhaling a puff of white mist, she rubbed her arms and observed the surrounding environment with the help of the flashlight. Chloe was using a camera to shoot the scene, and Lana's voice came to her from a distance. "Chloe, I think I found something." After shouting to Chloe, Lana cast her eyes on a dark red flower on the ground. Somewhat puzzled, Lana stretched her fingers towards the dark red plant. As if sensing Lana's approach, the dark red bud began to shrink back. Seeing this, Lana curiously stretched her face over. At the same time, she smelled a strange flower fragrance. At the moment Lana put her face close to the dark red flower, puff, the shrinking flower suddenly sprayed out a green smoke. Caught off guard, Lana directly absorbed all the smoke sprayed out by the flower. Covering her forehead, she suddenly felt dizzy. A dizzy feeling attacked her whole body. She wanted to stand up, but she felt that her body had lost all its strength in an instant. "What's wrong? Lana, what did you find?" Just as Lana's consciousness was a little fuzzy, Chloe's voice sounded behind her. After hearing Chloe's voice, the confused expression on Lana's face disappeared instantly, and the whole person became strong. She stood up, picked up a doll on the ground that might have been thrown out of the car, and said to Chloe with a smile on her face, "It's nothing, just a doll. It doesn't matter, let's go. It's too desolate here, and it's a bit cold." Seeing the doll in Lana's hand, Chloe shrugged his shoulders, indicating that there was nothing to find, and the two could go back. "You go drive, I'll be back later." Lana threw the doll to the ground and asked Chloe to drive first. After Chloe, who didn't suspect anything, left, Lana bent down, picked off the flower that was spewing smoke and was already wilting, and threw it into the woods. After doing all this, Lana stood up, put on the expression she often showed before, and walked outside. After the two left, Teresa and Loki arrived at the scene. Because Lana had thrown away the Nicodemus flower, the two did not find any valuable clues after searching. "The footprints here are quite messy, which means someone has been here before us. We may be a step too late." Loki squatted down, checked the footprints on the ground, and said to Teresa beside him, "Maybe it was done by someone from Lex company. Wasn't the employee who had a car accident from his company, wiping off the condensed water on the lenses of her glasses?" Teresa whispered her guess. "I guess it's possible." Loki stood up, patted his palms, and said to Teresa, "This trip is a waste of our time." Teresa nodded. While searching for suspicious things at the scene, she said to Loki, "Can I ask you a question?" Loki, "Of course. What do you want to ask? Did you really turn Thor into a frog? Did you run for president?" Teresa asked curiously what she heard from Zoo and Clark. Hearing the question that Teresa suddenly asked, Loki was a little speechless for a while. "That's a problem. I did do that, but it was a long time ago." Loki bent down and patted Teresa's shoulder. "Don't learn from me, why can't I? I'm a witch. Apart from my father, I don't think anything can limit me." Teresa pinched her waist and said to Loki in a very imposing manner. Looking at Teresa, who pretended to be very imposing, Loki's face showed a surprised expression. "No, you are wrong. Apart from my father, I can also control you. Do you know why, Bayonetta?" Without waiting for Teresa to answer, Loki bent down and approached her, and said to Teresa, "Because you are a witch, and I am an evil god." "Evil god?" "Yes," Loki said in shock, "because I am the strongest wizard in the 9 realms, I am an evil god." "Do you know what an evil god is?" Loki deliberately frightened Teresa. Teresa reached out and lifted up the frame of her glasses, and said to Loki, "But I don't think you are a bad person. You are an evil god, and I am a witch. I am not afraid of you." Loki looked at her in surprise. "You are not afraid of me?" "Yes, I am not afraid even if you are a bad person." "If you are a bad person, it means that there is something in your heart that is driven by something that is hidden and suppressed, such as jealousy, pain, isolation or loneliness. These things can turn yourself into arrogance or narcissism. All of these are part of you." Teresa said something that stunned Loki. "Who told you that?" "Teresa," Loki asked Teresa curiously. He didn't expect this little lolly to say such profound words. "I thought of it myself." Teresa smiled at Loki. Dad told me that you can just be yourself and don't care about what others think. I want to be someone who doesn't care about what others think in the future, and become someone like Dad. Even if I am a bad person or a witch, it doesn't matter. Well, I am optimistic that you will become a charming and attractive villain and witch." Loki gave Teresa a gesture of encouragement. He saw some of himself in Teresa. Or some of his other self in the Marvel world. Neither of them likes to follow the rules, and likes to do things that are considered unconventional in the secular world, such as Teresa's previous shooting method that was like dancing. But at the same time, the other Loki, or himself, behind the seemingly rebellious, under the lies, has a heart that wants to ask, am I worthy of being loved? But, Teresa, you have to understand that even if you want to be a witch, you have to understand that your father will tie you down for life in the name of love. You can't escape the old man's palm. He looked at the time on his watch and said to Teresa, "It's too late, let's go back first." Teresa followed Loki back to the car and said to him angrily, "Dad is not an old man. I'm going to go back and tell Dad that you called him an old man." "Really?" Loki pretended to be stupid and said that he had never said such a thing. "You said I heard it just now, then you must have had an auditory hallucination just now." "No, I didn't." Loki started the car, looked at the headlights illuminating the darkness ahead, and said to Teresa, "Think about it, Teresa, you are a little witch. Who will believe you? You are an evil god. No one will believe you either." "That's not necessarily true. In addition to being an evil god, I am also the god of fire and the god of mischief, the heir to Patrick's farm, the strongest wizard in the 9 realms, and the heir to Asgard, the prince appointed by my father. Do you think he will believe me?" The two of them argued in the already started car. The next day, early in the morning, Lex pushed open the door of the botanical garden laboratory with a bad face. "Dr. Hamilton, you didn't tell me the truth." Lex walked directly to Dr. Hamilton, who was fiddling with the experimental equipment, and said to him. Dr. Hamilton raised his head and put the equipment aside. "I'm telling you, it's under control." "Controlled? Now 2 people have developed an unknown disease," Lex said to him with an unhappy expression. "No one knows how to save them. I don't think it's under control. In addition, I have done some research on the plant experiments you did without authorization." As he said that, he threw a document on the table. Dr. Hamilton picked up the document in surprise and opened it. The title of an old newspaper appeared in front of him. Looking at the title Devil Flower on it, he was slightly stunned. Lex walked up to him and said to him, "In 1871, a strange epidemic broke out in the Mori Pioneer Land, and 200 people died overnight. When the incident happened in the Pioneer Land, a pastor who witnessed it left a diary." Lex looked up at him, paused and continued, "The last entry in the pastor's diary describes that the people in the Pioneer Land seemed to behave abnormally, and finally killed each other, leaving no one alive until the last drop of blood was shed. The scene described in this diary is quite shocking, and many people even thought he was writing a novel." He claimed at the time that it was a local plant that killed the pioneers. "Do you know about this, Dr. Hamilton?" Lex asked Dr. Hamilton. Seeing that the other party didn't speak, Lex coughed and picked up a diary inside. Chapter 872, Lana's Sudden Attack. On God's green earth, this flower is a thief in the temple, a silent temptress, and a sneeze can trigger the deepest instincts of human beings, driving them to death and to killing each other. After Lex finished reading the last page of the diary, he put the diary down and looked at Dr. Hamilton. Being stared at by Lex, Dr. Hamilton's expression was a little unnatural. He took a deep breath and said to Lex, "In the scientific community, it's just a folk legend." "Really?" Lex chuckled, adjusted his suit, and walked to a dark red plant covered by a glass cover. Staring at the beautiful flowers inside, he asked Dr. Hamilton, "In that case, do you mind if I open the glass cover and smell the plant?" He was about to lift the glass cover. Seeing that Lex seemed to really want to open the glass cover, Dr. Hamilton immediately reached out and pressed the glass cover. "No, you can't open it, Lex." Seeing Lex's teasing look, he explained somewhat unnaturally, "These flowers are said to be poisonous and can be fatal. There may be side effects." Lex listened to the other party's obviously unreliable explanation, and no longer asked to open the glass cover. He walked to the front of other plants and admired other plants cultivated by Dr. Hamilton. "You should understand, Dr. Hamilton, I am not here to fund you to do your favorite research. I am only interested in meteorites and the farmland of Mr. Patrick's family. The original purpose of establishing this botanical garden was to study the farmland plants of the Patrick family." Lex looked at Dr. Hamilton and said with a serious expression, You want to know what the plants you are studying are capable of? Sending people to the hospital is not within the scope of the plan, Dr. Hamilton said to him helplessly. Lex, every research has a price. Sometimes we have to sacrifice something, Lex interrupted him without waiting for the other party to finish. If Jonathan Kent dies, you will lose something more valuable than a lifelong career. Wrap the flower and I will find an expert from the Metropolitan Museum of Art to study it. That's my research. I don't care about your research, I just want to get the antidote. After Lex finished speaking, he glanced at Dr. Hamilton and turned to leave. Looking at Lex's back as he left, Dr. Hamilton narrowed his eyes. He stretched out his hand and extended his finger to the Nicodemus flower through the glass cover. Even through the glass cover, the Nicodemus flower seemed to feel someone approaching. Its bud opened and turned in the direction of Dr. Hamilton's finger. Then he retracted his finger and watched Lex leave. Dr. Hamilton didn't know much about his new employer, but he knew the other party's father. In his opinion, Lex and his father were the same kind of people. Lex, who walked out of the botanical garden laboratory, also thought of his father. Even without investigating this accident, he could guess that it was his father's fault. His hatred for his father increased invisibly. Leno Luthor, the founder of the Luthor Group, is a ruthless businessman who built his business empire through deception, threats and even crime. During his growth, Leno Luthor always controlled him with high pressure, such as hiding company secrets. Previously, in the factory in Smallville, the Leno Luthor building had a kryptonite laboratory on the 3rd floor. He has been using his weaknesses to force him to obey. As a father, Leno Luthor rarely showed his emotions to him, and regarded himself more as a tool for inheriting the business empire. Before, he forced himself to get engaged to Victoria through a political marriage to consolidate the family's power, although the engagement was not successful later. Of course, Leno Luthor had also shown some kindness to him. But Lex thought that it was more like a hypocritical attempt at redemption. Stopping, Lex exhaled dejectedly. These actions of his father were in sharp contrast to those of Peter Patrick. He always hoped that his father was a father like Peter Patrick. Although there are many children, every child lives together equally. They will not be regarded as tools by him, nor will they be forced to obey him. Even if they make mistakes, they will not show a very disappointed expression. Clark, Azu, Raven and their warm relationship with their father Peter Patrick, further contrast the distortion of his relationship with his father. Sometimes Lex would think that perhaps his jealousy and hostility towards Clark and Azu is partly due to the fact that the latter had family support that he never had. Perhaps, my ambition and moral ambiguity are also directly inherited from this father. Shaking his head with a complicated expression, Lex walked forward. Padwick Farm. Teresa is talking to her good friend Jean. Jean said that she was sent to school by her parents, but she didn't like school life and felt that school life was boring. Homework is stupid and meaningless. I already knew that knowledge. I want to do something practical instead of sitting in the classroom all day. And the teachers seem to know very little about our subjects and obviously don't want to study in depth. Jean said her thoughts. Teresa nodded into the microphone. You're right, Joan. The teachers in school are as bored as you are. Dad said that boredom and boredom are the norm for school teachers. Anyone who has been in the teacher's lounge can testify that the teachers there are listless, complaining and discouraged. Not surprisingly, teachers often blame their boredom on the students. Anyone would be bored teaching those rude students who are only interested in grades. Dad said that the teachers have already experienced the 12-year compulsory school curriculum that students are extremely bored with, not to mention that as school employees, they are trapped in a more rigid system than the one imposed on the children. Although I don't quite understand what this sentence means, Teresa thought for a moment, organized her words, and said to Joan, I complained to Dad about boredom before. Do you know what he said, Joan? What did the sir say? Teresa changed her posture and said to her, Dad said that he once complained to Grandpa that school life was too boring. It was a week ago in the afternoon. Dad complained to Grandpa about being bored. He slapped Dad on the head and told Dad never to use that word in front of him again. If Dad felt bored, it was his fault and had nothing to do with others. Grandpa said that we should take responsibility for our own entertainment and self-study. People who don't know this are childish and should be avoided as much as possible. Of course, such people are not trustworthy. At this point, Teresa paused. Then Dad found that challenging the idea that boredom and childishness are natural in the classroom at school was futile. Dad failed. At this point, Teresa chuckled. Joan of Arc on the other end of the phone also laughed with Teresa. By the way, "Where's Mr. Padraic?" Joan of Arc asked what Peter was. "Dad is in the hospital because Uncle Kent had an accident." Having said that, Teresa's face wrinkled. She wanted to say something else, but suddenly the door was pushed open. A familiar figure walked in. Seeing the person coming in, Teresa froze in place, unable to move, staring at the person blankly. Azu, Raven, Suri and Zatanna in the room also saw the person coming. Lana, with her short curly hair, is completely different from before. Lana used to wear light-colored sweaters, floral skirts and canvas shoes, looking fresh. But now, Lana is wearing a scarlet off-shoulder tight skirt, patent leather boots instead of a cotton long skirt, black fishnet stockings and a metal rivet belt. And Raven found that Lana's collarbone was deliberately exposed with glitter, and the necklace pendant was changed from a star-shaped pendant to a snake-shaped silver chain, making the whole person even hotter. Step. Step. Under the gaze of everyone, Lana walked towards them. The swing of her hips increased as she walked, and the rhythm of her high heels hitting the ground had a certain rhythm. Her deliberately slowed gait made her thighs faintly visible at the slit of her skirt. At this time, Lana had become a hot girl under the influence of the Nicotiaceum flower. Lana has carried the trauma of being a meteorite shower orphan since she was a child. The overprotection of her adoptive parents and the moral gaze of the small town made her cut herself into a perfect template. Now the neurotoxin of the Nicotiaceum flower has dissolved this layer of personality, releasing her subconscious primitive impulse to be noticed and fought for. "Is Peter not here?" Lana, dressed in a hot outfit, asked Raven. "No, Dad is in the hospital." "Lana, are you okay?" Raven looked at her in confusion and asked. She suddenly had a bad feeling in her heart. What does Lana want to do dressed like this? Who is she coming for? Clark? Or Dad? Lana heard that Peter was not there, and shook her head with some regret. "Then I'll go to the hospital to find him." "I'm fine, Raven. I've just been suppressed for a long time, so I want to relax and be my true self." As she said that, she twisted her hips and walked out in a striking way. Zatanna watched her leave and asked Raven with an expression that she couldn't understand, "What does she want to do?" "She won't seduce Peter, right?" Hearing her say this, everyone else in the room couldn't sit still. 10 minutes later, Peter just got in the car and was about to go to Lex to ask about Jonathan's situation. With a bang, the car door was suddenly pushed open, and a figure with a fragrant breeze sat in his arms and hugged his neck. Peter, who was suddenly attacked, was stunned for a moment, and then looked at the girl in his arms in shock. Lana. Chapter 873 Clark's doubts. Did Lana kiss him? "Lana, are you okay?" Peter looked at Lana, who had changed into a hot girl outfit and hugged him right away. Is this still Lana? Or has she been possessed by something? Peter's eyes revealed a look of surprise. "Are you Lana?" "Of course, I am Lana." "Peter, don't you recognize me? Are you sure you are not possessed by a witch?" "No, of course not," Lana said to the surprised Peter with a charming smile on her face. "Do you like my outfit?" "Today's outfit is completely prepared for you, Peter. In the past, I have never worn this outfit until today." Taking a look at Lana's hot outfit that was different from the past, Peter nodded and said without hesitation, "You are indeed dressed a little unusually today." This was not a compliment. Lana now did have a fatal attraction to the opposite sex. "Are you sure you want to sit on me?" Peter looked at Lana, who was hugging him and exuding a different charm, and asked her, "Aren't you worried that your aunt and Clark will not be able to explain this scene?" "Don't talk about Clark, Peter. Why don't we talk about the two of us, just you and me? No one else will disturb us." Lana hugged Peter's neck and looked at him with breath. "I have a lot of things to say to you, Peter. You should call me Uncle." "Lana, no, I like to call you by your name now. I call you Peter and you call me Lana. We are familiar friends, or," she paused and continued, "It's a relationship beyond friends." Peter looked at Lana, who was obviously not normal, and did not continue to talk to her, but observed each other with his perspective eyes. In the end, the same substance as Jonathan's blood was found in Lana's blood. "Something is wrong with you, Lana. You are no longer yourself now. You don't know what you are doing." Peter tried to make this hot and sexy hot girl sober up. "Of course I know what I'm doing, and I know it very clearly." Lana let go of Peter's hand and left the driver's seat. With a bang, she opened the passenger door and sat in. "Can you take me somewhere, Peter?" Lana suddenly became honest and asked Peter to take her somewhere. "Of course, but I suggest you go to the hospital for a checkup, considering that Jonathan was already in a coma." Peter was worried that Lana would have the same symptoms as Jonathan, so he hoped that she would go to the hospital for a checkup. "You have to take me to the place I said first, and then I will go to the hospital with you, my uncle," Lana emphasized the ending tone after the word uncle. Peter looked at Lana with a smile on his face, hesitated for a moment, and finally agreed to Lana's request. Anyway, with him here, Lana shouldn't have any accidents. 10 minutes later, Peter looked at the swimming pool in front of him in surprise. He didn't expect that Lana would take him to the swimming pool of Smallville High School. Since it is class time now, the students of Smallville High School are not on the swimming pool, and the whole pool seems empty. "Why did you come here, Lana?" Peter looked at the clear swimming pool and asked Lana. "Because it is very quiet here," and, as Lana said this, she walked to the pond, bent down and took off her long Martin boots. "And there are no taboos here." Lana threw the boots aside and walked barefoot to the diving board in the swimming pool. Standing on the diving board, Lana made several gymnastics cheerleading poses. "You know, Uncle Peter, I have always had a doubt. When I was 6 years old, you looked like this. When I was an adult and went to college, you still looked like this. You look like you are forever young. Aunt Nell said you are a god with divine power. She said you have been protecting Smallville, but I think," at this point, Lana turned around and smiled at Peter. "Uncle Peter, you are not only the patron saint of Smallville, but also my. Do you remember the first time we met?" Lana stared at Peter and said to him slowly, "At that time, I rode Tyson to go for a walk outside. My aunt told me that riding a horse is not an easy thing. Horses can be very stubborn, rude and timid animals. You will spend a long time teaching an animal that can't understand your inner anxiety. Sometimes the horse even kicks you off. I insisted on taming it, but Tyson was frightened while I was riding. I was so scared that I didn't know what to do on the horse's back. In the end, it was you, Uncle Peter, who saved me." Lana fell into memories of the past. "I was scared at the time and stammered to ask you, 'Uncle Patrick, are you a bird?' You answered me, 'I'm not a bird, I'm a flying knight, Uncle.' Do you remember these?" "Oh," Peter nodded. "I remember, Lana, it was the kite string that Zoo and Clark used to fly that scared the horses." Peter smiled at Lana faintly. "You were still a little girl at that time." Peter also felt a little emotional. Time makes people grow old, and he is old. The cute little girl back then has now become a tall and graceful lady. It's just that it seems that the lady in front of him seems to have some ideas about him. Then, in Peter's slightly surprised eyes, Lana put her hand on her belt. Peter, with a slightly dazed expression, watched Lana untie her belt. "Maybe." Lana threw the untied clothes to Peter and smiled at her charmingly. "Now I am the real me." Peter took Lana's clothes, looked at Lana who was bold, coughed and said, "Lana, this is crazy." Although reason told him that as Lana's elder, he shouldn't watch. But his body was still very honest, his expression was very serious, but his eyes didn't move away without blinking. Lana wore a swimsuit, posed a few gorgeous gymnastics moves, and stretched her arms. "That's the point, Uncle Peter. If life doesn't drive you crazy, why live it? I know what I want." Lana looked over at Peter as he watched her. With a smile on her face, she continued to say to Peter, "The question is, do you want it too?" After posing on the diving board for a few times, Lana did a backflip and jumped backwards, and then she jumped into the water with a splash. Lana jumped into the water and swam around like a mermaid, then popped her head out. Wiping the water off her face, she asked Peter, "Uncle Peter, don't you want to come down and swim with me?" "Not really." Peter rejected Lana's request with a serious expression. "Really?" Lana smiled slightly, swam a few rounds in the water, then got out of the water and walked to Peter's side. "I know what I want to do." She put her arms around Peter's neck. "I can't hesitate any longer. Come on, I'm not made of stone, and I believe you are not made of stone either." As she said this, she was about to kiss Peter. At the same time, because they were worried that Lana might seduce her father, Teresa and Raven went out together. Siri, Zatanna and Clark, who had just arrived at the farm, also followed the two of them. Especially Clark, when he heard that Lana had transformed into a hot girl to find Peter. He suddenly felt bad. "Don't worry, Clark, Lana's behavior is completely different from her usual self. That's not what she really thinks." Seeing Clark's worried expression, Zatanna whispered to comfort him. "You can't say for sure." Raven disagreed with Zatanna's opinion. "Maybe Lana wants to be brave this time," she said to Clark and others. "I just sent Fuakin to follow Lana. We can find her soon." At the same time, facing Lana's request for a kiss, Peter stretched out his fingers to block her lips. Seeing that she was rejected, Lana opened her eyes in surprise. "This is not what you really think, Lana. I don't want to wait for you to wake up and regret your current behavior." Peter shook his head slightly at her. "Besides, we are being peeped at now." When Peter said the word peeping, the flapping sound of wings suddenly came from outside the window of the swimming pool. Peter didn't wait for the peeping person to leave, and rushed forward. In Lana's shocked eyes, she saw a black crow caught in Peter's hand. "Crow." Seeing the crow that suddenly appeared, Lana asked in disbelief, "Why is there a crow here?" "Because it means that our owner is coming soon." Peter had just finished speaking when messy footsteps suddenly came from outside. "Dad?" Teresa's voice came from outside. Lana, who was soaking wet, could even faintly hear the voices of Raven and Clark outside. After hearing these voices, the guilty Lana immediately covered her face with clothes and fled the scene as quickly as possible. When the aggressive Raven and Teresa came in, they saw Peter standing alone by the swimming pool. Raven asked Peter puzzledly, "Dad, where's Lana?" "Lana left a long time ago, but why are you here?" "Raven, and your crow." Peter pointed at the crow standing on his arm and asked her with a serious expression. His eldest daughter followed him. "Want to rebel?" Seeing Peter's dissatisfied eyes cast towards her, Raven immediately lowered her head guiltily. Clark next to her looked as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. According to the message that Falcon passed on to Raven just now, everyone knew that Lana was standing by the swimming pool and wanted to kiss Peter. No one knew what happened after that. Now Clark really wanted to ask his godfather, did the godfather kiss Lana by the swimming pool at the end? Clark was very concerned about this issue. Chapter 874 The confrontation between Raven and Bayonetta. Although he was very conflicted in his heart, Clark finally did not ask Peter. He estimated that he might never be able to ask this question in his lifetime. The answer to this question would become an unsolved mystery in his heart. Clark thought with some sadness in his heart. After leaving the swimming pool, Peter took Teresa and Raven to Lex's company. Peter arranged for Siri and Zatanna, and Clark to go to the hospital to take care of Jonathan, and by the way, find Lana and send her to the hospital. A few minutes later, Peter drove fast on the road. Teresa, who was sitting in the back seat, hesitated for a while and finally asked Peter, "Dad, do you like Lana?" "Why do you ask?" Peter looked at Teresa in surprise. "Does this lolly know about love at such a young age?" "Because I think Lana likes you, Daddy. Don't you like me?" "Teresa, of course I like Daddy, but this kind of liking should be different." Teresa tilted her head, her glasses shining as she expressed her thoughts. "Also, Daddy, I don't like you, I love you." Raven, who was sitting in the car, looked at Teresa in surprise after hearing this. "What's the difference?" "Bayonetta, of course, love is a deep liking, and liking is a light love." Teresa held her little Shiba Inu, looking at the scenery flashing outside the window, and said to Peter and Raven, "I read in a book that love is a deep liking, and liking is a light love." People have known this sentence for a long time, but they have forgotten its meaning after growing up. They simply interpret it literally, and they don't think about the real meaning when they grow up. "Dad, I think liking someone can be very simple. I like someone at first sight. It's the first impression. It's the familiar warmth. It can also be a feeling of getting along very well. I like someone very simply. I don't need too much pressure. I like the sky after the rain or the breeze when autumn comes. I like them all." When Teresa said this, she turned her head to Peter and said in a very firm tone, "And love is a kind of dependence, a deep belief, believing that the sun will still rise tomorrow, believing that the earth will still rotate, and believing that even if we are far away, the person we love still has an unbreakable and continuous emotion. Dad, you and I, we are a family. This is the feeling of love. You and I, Dad, are a kind of universal gravitation, and we can't help but love." Peter was a little surprised when he heard Teresa say something that was almost a confession to him. Is this still his little witch Teresa? Why does she sound so wise just by talking casually? Peter knew that Teresa had studied with the witch elders before. Could it be that the witches taught Teresa this kind of emotional quotes? Peter was shocked. Raven beside him was also surprised and even a little jealous. Teresa has learned to flatter her father at such a young age? And she flatters her father so well. Looking at Peter, who was smiling and seemed to be secretly happy, Raven narrowed her eyes. She still underestimated this little lolly who called herself a witch. Compared with the black-bellied Azu, the evil god Loki, the little Horus who often expressed loyalty, and the temperament of Bao who was very resistant to his father. This witch who could speak sweet words was also a threat to her. Sure enough, witches are the most annoying at all times. Taking a deep breath, Raven asked Teresa, "You love your father, but who do you like?" Bayonetta. Teresa tilted her head and thought for a while, then said to Raven, "I like Jean, I like Persephone, I like Gloria, I like Bao and Wei, and I like you too." Hearing Teresa say that she liked her, Raven was speechless. This little witch really has a way. Now she has no reason to attack. Peter didn't know that Raven was complaining about Teresa in her heart. He reached out and touched Teresa's hair, and said to her, "Dad loves you too. It's not like, it's love. You and Raven, Dad loves you both." Being touched by Peter, Teresa enjoyed getting close to Peter's palm very much, letting her face touch Peter's palm, just like the little Shiba Inu in her arms. Enjoying the touch? Raven looked at Teresa's movements and turned away with some displeasure. Half an hour later, the car stopped at the entrance of the botanical garden of the Luthor group. Peter got out of the car and took Teresa and Raven to the botanical garden. When the two entered the botanical garden, they met Dr. Hamilton, who came out of the laboratory. Peter, who knew that the other party was the person in charge of the Luthor Botanical Garden, stopped him. "Dr. Hamilton, do you mind if we talk? Who are you?" Dr. Hamilton looked at Peter and his group in confusion. "I'm Peter Patrick." Peter told him his identity and walked towards him with his two daughters. "I've seen your paper on meteorites on the internet, Doctor." "Thank you." Dr. Hamilton stretched out his hand and shook hands with Peter. "I've heard of you, Mr. Patrick. I heard that you are a celebrity in the town of Smallville. I've been here for less than 2 months, and I've heard no less than 10 legendary stories about you. I'm honored." Peter smiled and said to him, "I heard before that someone stole the experimental flowers from the experimental botanical garden here. Is that true, Dr. Hamilton?" Without waiting for the other party to answer, Peter continued, "I heard that the guy named Bells came in under the name of Decoration. Maybe you didn't notice it, and then he took the things away directly." As he spoke, Peter looked around. His supervision saw the words Nicodemus written in the diary on the top of the materials piled in the corner of the room. Seeing this word, Peter frowned slightly. "No, that's not the case." Dr. Hamilton immediately denied that someone stole from the botanical garden. "You should understand, Mr. Patrick, this is the Luthor family's business. If you have any questions, you can ask Lex himself." Seeing that Dr. Hamilton didn't want to tell the truth, Raven immediately stepped forward and said, "Leave it to me, Dad." Raven stretched out her hand to him. Dr. Hamilton was pointed at by Raven's hand, and he immediately felt a blur of consciousness. Then Raven's soul rushed out of her body, turned into a ball of black mist and entered Dr. Hamilton's body. Seeing Raven transformed into black mist and entered someone else's body, Teresa was stunned. She walked forward nervously and pulled Peter's clothes, and asked him in a low voice, "Dad, what is Raven's ability?" Peter explained to her, Raven can release her own soul in the form of a huge black crow, which is composed of soul and magic power. It can cause certain physical damage, can obtain visual and auditory information, and can also enter other people's bodies. In addition, Raven can sense the emotions of people around her, and can also control people's emotions and thoughts, and even devour other people's dreams and memories. She can create illusions and gain power through other people's emotions. Now she is entering Hamilton's body and reading his emotions. Hearing Peter's words, Teresa was stunned. Raven can enter other people's bodies and read their memories? Doesn't this mean that she can enter her own body and find out that she doesn't like her, and then find out that she is lying? Teresa was a little flustered. She heard from Baku that Raven's biological father was the Three-Palace Demon, and the Three-Palace Demon was sealed in her body by herself. According to Baku, the birth of the Three-Palace Demon means the disappearance of a tribe member. Because on the day of his arrival, all his people were exterminated, and he became a demon with the same existence as a ghost. Sangong once destroyed a universe and became one of the most powerful villains in the world. Sangong slaughtered all members of this cult, including his mother, when he was a baby. In less than a year, he conquered the entire planet. When he was 6 years old, Sangong destroyed the planet and began his journey to conquer the universe. When he was 30 years old, Sangong had conquered millions of worlds. Even when someone wanted to use the power of the Heart of Darkness to absorb his abilities, he absorbed them instead. In this way, the power of countless powerful demons was gathered in one. Raven was able to seal up such a powerful father, which meant that she was not an ordinary person. Teresa suddenly felt that Raven in front of her was a little scary. Raven, the ruthless person who could seal her father, what if she knew that she lied? What should she do? It seems that she can't beat her now. Just as Teresa was thinking about it, Dr. Hamilton's dark eyes blinked. After reading all the memories of the other party, Raven came out of Hamilton's body and said to Peter, "Dad, I know, it's the Nicodemus flower." She cast her eyes on a red plant on the side. "This is the Nicodemus flower." After listening to Raven's brief description of the situation, Peter immediately asked her to take the Nicodemus flower to Gotham to find Bruce. Bruce's research laboratory should be able to find the corresponding antidote soon. Raven had just left when Peter received a call from Neil. Neil told her anxiously on the phone, "Lana is in trouble." Hearing that Lana was in trouble, Peter frowned. Bending down, picking up Teresa, Peter quickly left the botanical garden. A few minutes later, Peter activated his super speed and came to the field outside Patrick's farm. He saw Lana climbing up along the huge windmill. Chapter 875, The Darkened Bayo Bayo? Please call me Jinx. "Lana, what are you doing? It's dangerous here, come down." Seeing Lana climbing the ladder of the huge windmill alone, Peter stood outside and shouted to her, "Come down quickly, this is not the place you should come up, it's very windy here, very dangerous, come down quickly." Hearing Peter's voice, Lana turned around and smiled at him. "I know what I'm doing. I'm doing something I've never tried before. Peter, do you know that I wanted to climb here a long time ago? Recently I've been thinking about trying something brave, just like what I'm doing now. I want to stand on it and say loudly, 'I love you.'" Peter, after saying that, Lana turned around and slowly climbed up the stairs. But before she reached the top, Lana felt a trance in her consciousness. Then she felt a burst of nothingness in front of her eyes. Lana, who couldn't control her body, felt a stagger under her feet and fell unconscious from the ladder she was climbing. Seeing Lana fall from a height to the ground, Peter immediately activated his super speed. With a bang, he hugged Lana who was falling. Clark, who was looking for Lana, also rushed over at this time. Seeing Peter holding the unconscious Lana in his arms, Clark felt a little depressed. How could he be a step late? Clark, who was a little annoyed, lowered his head and saw Teresa next to him staring at him with suspicion. Feeling a little guilty, he immediately coughed and walked quickly to Peter. "Godfather? What happened to Lana?" Clark looked at the unconscious Lana and asked worriedly. "It should be the same situation as Jonathan. Let's go to the hospital first." Peter held Lana and asked Clark to take Teresa and go to the hospital with him first. At the same time, the news that Jonathan and Lana were affected by unknown substances and their mental states became abnormal soon spread in the farm. Bomb, Wei, and Mark, who were more interested in this, found Chloe and wanted to find out what was going on. At the Talon Club, Bayo Bayo ordered a vanilla milkshake. After thanking the waiter, he asked Chloe curiously, "What happened, Sister Chloe? Why did Jonathan and Lana change their temperaments?" Wei and Mark next to him also pricked up their ears. "I secretly went to Dr. Hamilton's house before and found a book inside. This is it." She handed a book with Nicodemus' diary written on the cover to Mark. "What is this?" "This is a first-hand record of the first mysterious incident in the town," Chloe explained to the other party. "In 1871, a nonsensical violent incident occurred in the Pioneer area." Bayo Bayo supported his chin with one hand, interrupted Chloe and said to her, "It's good to know that the town was raided before the meteor shower." Chloe smiled at Bayo Bayo. "Yes, back to this diary. It talks about a flower. The pioneers called it Nicodemus. It is said that it will release repressed emotions, make people angry, then fever, and finally." She stopped here. But Mark, Boom, and Wei knew what she meant. "Where do we need to find this flower?" Wei frowned and asked Chloe. "That's the problem," Chloe sighed. "After the massacre, the cavalry set fire to the pioneer land. They didn't want the disaster to spread. Since then, this flower has disappeared. In other words, this flower has disappeared for more than 100 years. After taking a sip of the coriander milkshake that Wei and Mark thought was very scary, Boom asked Chloe, "Then how is this flower related to Hamilton?" Chloe took out a stack of information and explained, "In addition to being a botanist, he is also a geologist. I found a paper he published 6 years ago, published by Metropolitan University Press." She showed the paper she found to Boom and the other two. In this paper, he hypothesized that meteorites can be used to irradiate dormant plant cells. Wei almost understood it after hearing this. In other words, It was Hamilton who revived the plant, and then he wanted to hide the truth. Wei didn't know at this time that Peter, Raven, and Teresa had already found Hamilton in advance and learned about the Nicodemus flower from him. Seeing that Bomb, Wei, and Mark were about to take action, Chloe stopped the three. Wait? Do you know who Dr. Hamilton works for? Without waiting for the three to answer, Chloe said directly, Lex, I knew it was him. Bomb showed an unhappy expression on his face. I told Dad before that Lex is not a good person. He looks at us very strangely, as if he always wants to peek into Dad's secrets. This guy is the kind of person who will plot behind the scenes, just like Hilco. Listening to Bomb's words, Chloe asked in confusion, Who is Hilco? Mark explained, Bomb's fellow Zon. Chloe nodded. Although she still didn't know who Hilco was, she didn't want to continue to dwell on this issue. She looked out at the gradually darkening sky and asked Bomb, can you accompany me to investigate Dr. Hamilton tonight? Of course, Bomb would not refuse. At night, Bomb, Wei, Chloe, and Mark began to act. Taking advantage of the night, the four quietly sneaked into Dr. Hamilton's plant research room. Wei held a flashlight and whispered to Chloe, who was using the flashlight to search for things everywhere, we have suddenly become experts in breaking into people's homes. If my father knew I did this, he would definitely criticize me. Calm down, you are not a law enforcement officer here, Chloe comforted Wei, but unexpectedly, the flashlight hit something, and with a bang, something fell from the shelf. Be careful, Wei quickly picked up the things and pulled Chloe into the shadows. Mark and Bomb, who heard the movement, also hid quickly. After confirming that they were not discovered, they came out of the shadows and continued their actions. The separated Bao, with a flashlight, walked carefully to an object covered with a tarpaulin. Curious about what was inside the tarpaulin, Bao carefully pulled open the tarpaulin. On the other side, Chloe was carefully looking for something, and suddenly heard the sound of something breaking behind her. Hearing the sound of breaking, Chloe turned her head sharply. Mark and Wei also cast their eyes in this direction. Taking a deep breath, Chloe signaled Mark and Wei not to move, and she carefully approached the place where the sound came from. Behind the tarpaulin, Chloe walked over carefully. When the flashlight shone over, she was surprised to find a dark red plant that had been thrown on the ground. Looking at the scene in front of her, Chloe was slightly stunned. Is this a broken flower? Did Bao do it? But where is Bao now? I just saw her behind the tarpaulin. Puzzled, Chloe raised her head and looked around, trying to find Bao's figure. The next second, a blue-haired girl with neatly trimmed bangs appeared in Chloe's sight, which scared her. Hey, Chloe, Boom suddenly appeared and greeted her in a low voice. Boom? Are you okay? Yes. Of course I'm fine. And, Chloe, don't call me Boom, please call me Jinx Patrick. Boom didn't know when the pair of distinctive bang guns were held in her hands. Or, you can call me the son of Zon, Peter Patrick's favorite daughter, and Jinx who inherited my father's great rebellious spirit. Chloe looked at Boom, whose temperament had changed drastically, and guessed that she had been infected by the Nicodemus flower. It seemed that the plant that had just fallen was Nicodemus. You are a little bit strong now, Boom, you may have been infected by Nicodemus, Chloe said as she slowly backed away. At this time, Wei and Mark also walked to Chloe's side and looked at Boom in shock. Boom said nonchalantly, I think I'm fine, because I was a lunatic to begin with, and I have a doctor's certificate. To be honest, I feel much better now. Seeing Boom's expression that said I'm much better now that I've gotten a mental illness, Wei swallowed nervously. She had heard from her father that Boom might have some family genetic diseases, especially mental ones. Boom, come here, Dad will heal you, let's go home together, and everyone will help you. Wei slowly stretched out her hand to Boom. Bao showed a playful smile on his face. Everyone? You mean Azu, Loki, Tom and the others? Those rascals are just useless guys who want to compete for Dad's attention everywhere. Bao stretched out his pistol, pointed it at Wei and Mark, and said to them, sooner or later, I will deal with them all, especially that little witch Teresa, but now, I want to prove one thing, that is, I can solve this matter. I can solve the problem that you can't solve. I am the most trustworthy daughter of Dad. Bao had a smug expression. After he finished speaking, he turned the gun in his hand handsomely, and then pointed the gun at Chloe and the others. Just when Mark thought Bao would shoot at him and the others, he was ready to stop her. Unexpectedly, Bao suddenly pointed the gun at the glass behind the few people. With a bang sound of a gunshot, the glass of the laboratory was hit by the bullet and fell to the ground with a crash, making a harsh sound. The alarm sounded in the laboratory. The moment the alarm sounded, the guards outside immediately took action and rushed to the laboratory. Wei had to evacuate the laboratory with Mark and Chloe. Before leaving, she looked in the direction of Bao and found that Bao had disappeared. Damn. She lost Bao. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.